always used to lay you clean up the messes. Down on my knees, thought I couldn't stand up on my own. Turns out sometimes you're stronger alone.
My name is Spencer. I'm 36 years old. I was a Jehovah's Witness, and I am shunned.
All right, Spencer. So how'd you come to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the first place?
Well, I was born in third generation on both sides, a little bit of fourth generation too, actually.
Oh, wow, goes back deep. So
Quite
do
a
you
ways.
know anything about the origins of it in your family at all?
A pretty decent bit. On my dad's side, it was his dad, my grandfather, who first showed some interest in it. My understanding is, I guess they just came and knocked on the door and he started talking to them. I don't really know what drew him towards it, why he was interested in it. I know he had kind of like a bit of like a lonely childhood and like a rough young adulthood, so I could kind of see that being a part of it. But regardless, he started talking to I think my dad was a newborn at that point. And so he started talking to them, and then my grandmom did the very classic, stop me if you've heard this before, JW story, where she's like, this is wrong, and to prove it, I'm going to study with them. And then she's in it too. And I think they were baptized before my dad was a year old. So he had one Christmas that he can't remember, but there's an old picture somewhere, I think.
Wow. There's so many people have that story too, of having like one Christmas, one holiday, because often the birth of a child, that is a big event in and of itself. And sometimes that creates a lot of vulnerability, and people are looking for some stability for their kids, and that's how they get involved.
True. I didn't even thought of that part. Could very well be. Like I said, he was very, very young when they got involved with it. But yeah, my granddad was an elder, and my dad's been an elder my whole life. They call it the coordinator of the body of elders now, but it was the presiding overseer when I was a kid. He was presiding overseer for like a real good chunk of my life. I think from when I was like maybe like 8 or 9 till my early 20s. He was. So yeah, runs like a pretty decently prominent family on that side. Just have like one aunt on that side, and they're all still in it besides me. And on my mom's side, her dad, his parents actually were witnesses in, I guess, like the 30s or 40s or something like that.
Oh, wow.
They might have even been Bible students. I'm not sure how that would have lined up, but I don't think they were very, very huge into it, or very like super into it. They're out in like the middle of nowhere, and I think they had something like 14 or 15 kids, one of those big farm families. So I don't think they were like super devout, but they were apparently baptized witnesses. And my grandfather grew up knowing about it, but not being like really like made to do it or go to all the meetings and all that stuff. So eventually he and my grandmom get married. They have 7 kids. My mom is the middle child of 7 kids. And when my mom is 8 years old, she starts asking all those existential questions about like what happens when people die, and like how do we get here? Why are we here? All that stuff. And my grandmom decides, okay, I'm going to start sending the kids to church with the neighbor down the street. And my grandfather walks in the room and he says, no kids of mine are going to know Babylon the Great Church. If they study of anybody, they're going to study of Jehovah's Witnesses. And my grandmom's like, what? What are you talking about? But again, the classic JW story, like a week later, they come knocking on the door. So
Yes. So it was fated to happen, right?
Seems that way.
Even though they don't believe in fate, somehow it was fated to happen.
Yeah. So, and then they went into it too. I think 4 of the 7 kids are still witnesses.
Wow.
At this point. But my mom was, again, the one who I think wanted it more than anybody. So she's very strong in like believing.
Okay. So it sounds like, again, it runs deep in your family. It's both sides, it's generations back. Was it, Jehovah's Witnesses would refer to that as a rich spiritual heritage of sorts, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Um, and so I guess most of most of the people around you growing up were probably Jehovah's Witnesses. I mean, obviously, if you're a strong family, you're around the witnesses at the Kingdom Hall and stuff anyway. But it sounds like, I guess, most of your cousins or people like that, a big family.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I didn't know the ones who aren't witnesses super well.
Mm,
Although I was one of the youngest cousins anyway, so they were all a lot older than me, and we didn't like hang out all the time. But
gotcha.
yes, all quite a bit big like witness family that I spent a lot of time with, and with the other people at the hall and everything. Yeah, didn't really probably never hung out with any other witnesses or anybody who wasn't witnesses before school.
Okay. Okay. So coming from this big family where you're basically surrounded by witnesses and it runs deep, uh, what did it mean to you to be raised as a JW? Because being a witness was all you knew. I mean, was there a certain worldview that it gave you?
Well, yeah, it was all I knew. So in a lot of ways, I didn't really think about it all that much. It's like, oh yeah, that's the way it is. Okay, cool. And just kind of like moved on to things that were more interesting to me. Like I was never the one who's like, oh, I love reading the Bible and learning about all this stuff. But I was very much like believe that it was true. Like my mom, when I was young, would always tell me that it was really important to decide for yourself that it was the truth and to like have that foundation to believe in it. And I think I was pretty young, and I came to that decision when there is a VHS tape they had. I think like the second or third one they made, like something about like the Bible and history and prophecy. And I thought it was fascinating. And I was like, all those stuff about like talking about like world history and how it played in the Bible prophecy and stuff. And like I was young enough where I couldn't really have like explained any of what I saw back to you. But I saw it there. I'm like, oh wow, this is all the case and it must be true. And that's when I decided. And that like set my path for a very long time from there. So I was like very much like, okay, this is the truth, this is the way it is. But at the same time, I was like, okay, that's cool. And then I want to let's go watch TV, or let's go read this book, or let's sit down and draw. I was like, now I have made this decision, it's the background of the life. Like, I don't want to be thinking about it all the time, constantly, I guess. That was
Okay.
like my favorite, most interesting thing. But it was always there. It was always at the meetings or in service or doing something.
So it was just this thing that's okay. Well, this is true. Let me ask, how old were you when you saw that video that kind of impacted you?
Oh man,
Remember?
I don't remember for sure. Probably like 6 or 7, maybe.
Okay, so pretty young.
Pretty young, yeah.
Okay.
Just being sick, I think, from like a meeting. We decided my mom put that on since we were missing a meeting.
We're missing the meeting, but we have to do something, of course. We can't just be
Exactly.
sick.
Yes.
But yeah, it's so it sounds like you were a kid that accepted this as the truth, did truly believe it, but you weren't really looking for it to dominate. You're a kid, right? So you're like, okay, this is true, fine. I don't really grasp. I mean, what kid really has the perspective to grasp what this would really mean for the whole world?
Oh yeah.
You're 5, 6 years old. You just want to go play, right? I mean, isn't that what kids want to do typically? Is okay,
Pretty
there's
much,
this
yeah.
thing, it's true, but let's go play cars or watch TV or whatever.
Like, yeah, no, exactly. Like, I think I had like a little bit of understanding of what they're saying was supposed to happen, but it never fully translated
Sure.
to like things. Like I've heard some of your other guests before talk about how they like were thinking about how all their classmates were going to die in Armageddon or this or that. And it's like, I think I knew on an intellectual level that they taught that all the people who like weren't witnesses would die in Armageddon, but somehow that never translated into my brain to be like, all my classmates are going to be destroyed in Armageddon or whatever. Like that sort of thing never clicked with me. I think there was always a part of me is like I've always loved like stories and TVs and movies and all that sort of stuff. So I think I almost still almost a part of me that when I remember all these like witness stuff, I treat it like the same lore as I would if like learning about like Star Wars or something like.
I mean, okay, yeah, I can see that, right? It's like it's just a story that you're being exposed to, and it sounds like it was something you accepted, but it wasn't dominating you. It wasn't inducing a lot of fear in you. It doesn't sound like, at least back then.
Not fear of yeah, at that point later, but at that point not fear of like God, but I was very afraid of getting in trouble. I so I would know the rules because I always wanted to do the right thing and not do the wrong thing and get in trouble. But I couldn't necessarily have explained to you why this was the wrong thing or why I would get in trouble for that, like the why the rules are. For me, it was just important to like know what to do and what not to do.
Right. It was right or correct because you didn't get in trouble for it.
Yes, exactly.
That's what made it right. It was right to do because if you go down this path, you don't meet resistance, you don't get in trouble.
There was at some point when I must have wanted to watch some TV show or said that my mom didn't like or something, and her statement she said to me was basically like, "Oh, we don't watch bad TV shows. We only watch good TV shows," which is like the way you talk to little kids, but so like frustratingly, incredibly vague. That what I came away from that was that everything we watch is good and everything we don't watch is bad, basically. And like for a little bit, I had the understanding that any TV show that we weren't already watching was not suitable. I had like a very like black and white mindset, and I don't know if I'm naturally that way, and the witnesses just exasperated it, or if that was given into me because of the growing up as a witness. But it was something definitely something I've had to like as I've gotten older work to push away from and see more of those like shades of gray sort of thing.
Well, yeah, think about it. So you just by nature being one of Jehovah's Witnesses, you have the truth. They call it the truth, thereby indicating that everything else is false, right?
Yeah.
And so they set up the black and white dichotomy in everything in life. And I just really appreciated what you said there about just like a TV show. If we watch it, it must be right or good because we wouldn't watch it if it was bad. So, it's so simplistic, but it's really kind of indicative of how it is to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses. You're trying to do the quote right thing, but you only assume it's right because people are telling you you can do that thing. Anything you can't do must therefore be wrong. And so it really puts you in a position, not like you said, you couldn't explain why it was right, other than that there were these negative consequences being enforced as boundaries to push you down a prescribed path.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's what we all lived, right? I mean, for the most part. So that being the case, let's look at your life a little bit when you were young. So what was life like at home for you as a witness? Were you all the family that was super into family study, and like was it really dominant in your home, or were you all going out and having fun and doing other things?
No, we actually really didn't have very much family study. My dad would try, but like he would do it. As you say, we're going to sit down, we're going to have family study every week. And we sit down, we do it for like 2 weeks, and we would get too busy and we wouldn't do it for like 8 months until they had a part about it on the meeting. That was my whole childhood until well into adulthood when they said, okay, here is your designated night for family study. And then he kind of had to do it. But we were the family who was at every meeting, was in field service every week. I mean, like, there was some like leniency and room for flexibility if we were either usually out on Saturday or Sunday, but if we had to miss one, we'd go out on the other or different things like that. But honestly, I had a pretty happy childhood and happy home, especially at the very young age. Little, I mean, not that we really had much money or anything, but I was probably a little spoiled. I was the only child that was very much wanted. Well, my mom wanted to have lots of kids and ended up just only being able to have me. So I was very, very loved and wanted. And we did a lot of, they would have my friends over and take us out to places, and I had happy meals all the time. And a lot of childhood memories of being at like going to gardens and parks, or going to the old like play places. We used to have like the Discovery Zone. We were crawling through the tubes. Like I could have done that 24/7 when I was a little kid. It made me very happy. But no, it was a pretty happy home life, fortunately, because school and the meetings were rough when I was that age. But I was always happy I could just go home and like watch TV or draw and do something fun. If I didn't have a friend in my congregation, I at least had like friends of like my mom. A lot of my closest friends at that age were kids of my mom's friends from like other congregations that she'll drive me off to see every once in a while. So like my parents tried really hard to make sure that I was happy and having a good time.
Was it kind of, what was the temperature of the room in your house, so to speak? I mean, everybody seemed to kind of get along together. Did you guys, and you guys, it sounds like they did a good job of making sure that you tried to have things to do or have people to do them with at times, because I know that can be hard depending on the congregation you're in. Sometimes there's no other kids, and it sounds like, so your parents had a happy relationship. Also, do you have any siblings?
Just me. Only child. My parents get along decently. They've been having the same fight over and over again my entire life. It's they bicker a lot, but it did actually really bother me when I was young, because they always, like, I struggle with what word to use there. So I was a kid, like, you're always yelling at each other. And mom's like, you've never seen us yell at each other. You've never seen us yell at each other. But I did really feel like they were angry a lot, not at me, but like at each other. And I didn't like that. But like I didn't feel like there was like oppressive anger all the time. It would just like pop up here and there, and that upset me because I was a very sensitive child.
Well, sure, and all kids have their feelings set wherever they are. If it's out of the ordinary from the normal way that people are talking to each other, then it's probably going to come across as yelling, right? I mean, to you. And maybe there's just another level they could have taken it to. I don't know, but I mean,
I think they were yelling but not screaming was probably how I would phrase it.
Okay.
Where she probably took yelling as screaming when I said it, if we're going to get into semantics.
Yeah, and it, well, also, when you get, I would imagine, I don't have kids, but I would imagine as a parent, when your kids are like, hey, quit yelling at each other or screaming or whatever they say, it's got to take you by surprise too, that you're coming across that way. And so, yeah, I guess I can see it being important to downplay the effects of all of that, to some degree. But I mean, everybody's human, and relationships are hard, and that all of that is understood. I just kind of wondered, what the tenor of the home life was just on a daily basis. If you guys got along pretty well together, if you were close, what the general feeling was.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one overall.
Yeah. Okay. So what about well, you kind of touched on it, so let's go ahead. So the Kingdom Hall, how did you feel at the Kingdom Hall? Were you did you enjoy the meetings at all? Did you enjoy field service at all, or giving talks or anything? Did you feel like you fit in?
I did really like giving talks when I started giving talks, because I was, especially when you first start for like young boys, it's just the Bible reading, and I'm a really good reader. So I was a really good reader. So I could get up there and read like I was like 3 or 4 years older than I was, and all the adults in the congregation like, "Oh, you did so good!" And I loved getting like that praise and going up there and getting like that good attention. So I loved that, and I liked the parts of field service where we would like stop and get a snack, or like my mom had a few calls when I was growing up. We'd go and sit in there and talk to them for like a half hour, and they'd give me an apple or a candy bar before we left. Like, and I like walking around the neighborhoods or different stuff like that. I never necessarily liked going and talking to people at their doors or sitting there and listening to a talk at the meeting. Normally when we were at the meetings, when I was really young, I had a book I could draw, and my mom would draw me the tree houses that like the Bernstein Bears lived in. So I wanted to live in a tree house, and the new system was my was my dream as a little.
Awesome.
Because he draw me tree houses during the meetings. I'd be sitting there looking through the back of like the JW Bible where they have those journeys of Paul's and like following the lines around back and forth. Or when I got a little older, I would read through like the Proclaimer book they had, which is the heavily sanitized history of Jehovah's Witnesses, and like read the stories and stuff, because like I got like the magazines back then would have people's life stories, and I would sit there and read those. I love that sort of thing, but the ones where it's like trying to teach you a lesson or instruct you, I'm like, oh, this is so boring, I don't want to do this. That sort of thing. When I was really young, there's a hall we were in until I was maybe like 6 or 7 that I really liked, and I had a couple good friends my age in it. This one kid who lived across the street from me, we were best friends. She was in that hall with me, and I really loved that, to go around after the meeting and talk to like the old people. There's one lady who'd always give me a quarter, different stuff like that. We moved halls around that age, like I said, and I had a rough time in that one. There were like no kids my age, and there were all these teenagers who like made fun of me a lot, and I felt very isolated and alone there. So that was a much like the rougher experience for me at the hall when that happened. And that was kind of like lasted like that for quite a while, honestly, until like it was like high school age. I really didn't have anybody in that hall I was like friends with who was in like the same age and peer group as I was. So I kind of spent a lot of time like living in my own head.
Yeah, very isolating, right? Because you don't have friends at the hall, and we'll get to it, but you're typically not allowed to have friends at school or anywhere else or in the neighborhood. So, who are you to do anything with? What's your other option other than living in your head?
Well, like I said, my parents did a pretty good job of like, especially during that period of my life, and making sure that I had friends and making sure that I got to see them like as much as possible.
Oh, that was when they were going out to the other friends of their friends from other congregations.
Yeah, so like there was never a period in my life where like I have no friends, I have nobody to do anything with, but it's like you're spending all this time, like 10 hours a week, but like in this Kingdom Hall or like out in service talking to people, and like I had nobody there that I really liked or could talk to, and it was just that was kind of very lonely.
I get that. Especially since it's such a dominant part of your life and such an important part.
My dad is always like the last person to leave. It would be me and my mom sitting in the lobby waiting for him to finish this like 20-minute conversation with the other last person there so we could go home. Like,
so you all were closing down the Kingdom Hall after the meetings every time.
Oh yeah, that was us. we called my dad Jibber Jabber Man, just because he can talk to anybody and have long, endless conversations with anybody, and would at the hall for sure. And so we just like always sitting around waiting to go home. That's very, very strong memories of spending a lot of time sitting around waiting to go home, basically.
Well, then as an elder too, when you were young, I mean, elders often have elders meetings to go to after the meetings and things like that. And those can run off forever at times too. I just remember that from my own experience.
Oh yeah. There's this joke about, oh yeah, we're gonna have a short elders meeting, and everybody laughs because they'll be in there for like 45 minutes at least. Like,
yes. So it sounds like you kind of, whether it's just part of your base personality or whether it was coping or whatever, it sounds like you kind of made the best of or looked for the parts of things where you could have some fun, like going out in service and stuff. Some of the things you mentioned, it's getting the little snacks or the break time, or it's being at the meetings and the sweet old sister who gives you a quarter, a 90-year-old butterscotch from her purse, those kinds of things, right? It's like those little things when you're a kid, it means a lot, and it adds color to an otherwise colorless, monotone world.
Doesn't take much to make me happy or get me excited, but which is a skill that has served me well, but I need something.
Yes, absolutely. So what was life like at school for you? Were you did you go to, I guess, first of all, did you go to public school? Because some don't. And then how did you fare? Did you enjoy it?
It's a fair question. All of that. I went to public school, yes. My mom would have liked to have homeschooled me. And when I was very young, I wanted to be homeschooled because I was having a rough time at school. But we couldn't really afford that. It wasn't in a situation that would have worked. Like, both my parents had to work. Actually, my mom worked a lot of odd jobs so that she would be home when I was home, like after school or like during the summers and stuff. Just like a lot of cleaning jobs. She was the lady who they don't have them anymore, but used to have these coupon machines in grocery stores. You'd pull the coupon out and spin another coupon out. She would be the person to go there and change the coupons out or change the advertising that was around the store. Like different flexible jobs like that, where she could like be home when I was home, or like during the summer take me with her. But she had to do something, so she couldn't homeschool me. So I went to public school. I liked learning. I liked going to school and being taught things and like learning how to read and doing all that stuff. I was always pretty good at school. I got straight A's until like third or fourth grade. I was really good at that sort of thing, but I had a really rough time with the other kids. I was a very earnest and smart and weird little kid that like other kids did not appreciate.
And are you saying that you were that way? Was that just part of who you are, or were you kind of different? Like, how much of that, I guess, was just who you were or the environment you were growing up in? How much of that do you think was related to being a witness growing up? Because being a witness growing up sets you apart in a lot of ways too.
I mean, a lot of that really was just who I was.
Okay.
I'm just a big old nerd, and like that wasn't cool yet. And but there was a part of it that was like being a witness to. Like it was like I feel like every person who comes on your show says the same thing, but it was rough to be that one kid who like had to go sit out in the hallway when they're doing the holiday presentations or having the cupcakes or whatever. That makes you look different. Remember kids asking me like why I couldn't do a holiday thing. I'm just like, oh man, because it's against my religion, and like them asking me more questions. It's like, why do you want to know this? I don't want to talk to you about this.
You weren't being a very good witness, Spencer.
I wasn't.
But honestly, did you know all the reasons behind? Like, could you have really intelligently explained all the ins and outs? And honestly, some of it doesn't make sense anyway.
Especially when you're like in second grade trying to tell other second graders like, no, Jesus wasn't really born on Christmas, and Satan sent the star with the wise men. They were bad, and like people got beheaded on birthdays, and like even in like a first or second grade, I'm like, I sound like a crazy person. that was like the feeling I had. I hated talking about JW stuff or telling other kids I was a witness. Like in like my middle school years, like 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, I didn't tell any of the other kids. I got away for years of hiding it or not telling other kids. And then going into high school, I felt really guilty about it, and felt really guilty about that, and made a point to tell people when I went into high school. But oh yeah, I remember what I was going to say. But I didn't think I got made fun of for being a witness too much, but there was definitely like stuff that like when I was in, I think first grade was when Power Rangers broke and got really big. And like every kid in my school watched Power Rangers. And my mom wouldn't let me watch Power Rangers because it was violent and there was martial arts in it. And martial arts is Eastern spiritism, and you can't watch this. And I was like the only kid in my school who wasn't watching this show that, like, honestly, like knowing my taste, I probably would have fucking loved. But so that was like I was made fun of because I was the only kid who wasn't watching it and was so out of the loop, and that like stuff like that would isolate me more at school too. Like I was just a very odd and weird different kid, and being a JW was far from the only reason for that, but it definitely played a part in it.
Well, yeah, I mean, as a 45-year-old adult today, I can go hang out with people, and if they talk about things from their childhood that they remember, I didn't see any of those things. I wasn't allowed to watch that movie. I never had that experience. And so it does create some measure of at least feeling awkward inside because you know you don't belong in
Oh
those
yeah.
conversations.
And eventually it was a measure of frustration too, because like at first it was like, all right, well, if mom's saying I can't watch this and it must be bad and I won't watch this, and like it wasn't me sitting there being like, oh man, I want to watch Power Rangers, that was awesome. It's like, oh man, I wish I could watch the Power Rangers so I could be with the other kids at school and they wouldn't think I'm weird for not watching Power Rangers. But then like a couple years passed, and like I made this friend in third grade who was really a little asshole. He was just friends with me because he could take advantage of me because I was just so desperate for a friend. But he always wanted to play like a Sonic the Hedgehog, like the video game character. He always wanted to like play like Sonic on the playground and stuff, and like really wanted me to watch the Sonic show. And my mom had by that point made a rule: if I wanted to watch a new show, be like, well, I'll sit down and watch an episode of this show with you and then decide whether you can keep watching it or not, was my mom's rule, which isn't a terrible rule in isolation. But like we watched this one episode of this Sonic cartoon, and the bad guy in the episode is just like Weasel or something, who was a con artist, and he kept trying to trick Sonic and stuff. My mom's like, well, I really don't like him. He's a mean character. I don't like that example. You shouldn't watch this. And I remember I'm in third grade. I'm like, he's a bad guy and he's only in this one episode. Like, what in the world is wrong with this? So at that point I started getting real frustrated. It's like, okay, I can't do these things I want to do. I don't really trust my mom's judgment anymore in these sort of areas. So I was feeling like the limitations there, but I put that more on my mom than on the religion at the time.
Sure, absolutely. I can see that. Look, there's only room for one bad guy, and that's Satan the devil. We can't be entertaining ourselves with other imaginary bad guys. So
Well, I had a Batman game at that point in my life where it was a card game, and there's a cassette that you played along with that would tell you instructions, and it said when you play the winning hand, you yell Batman and Robin rule. My mom's like, no, you say Batman and Robin rule in Gotham City because only God rules, only Jehovah rules.
oh gosh. Okay. I get it. I understand how they would get there. But it's so, man, God must be so petty. So petty. You know, when you think about that, to the Jehovah would be upset, you know, he's like, then a grown man would be upset that you said, you know, Batman rules or whatever instead of, you know, my dad rules or something. Like, come on.
I didn't even understand the connotation of like rules. The word like is ruling. Like it's just like, oh, it means he's cool.
Yes, he rules. He's awesome, right? Like that's another way of saying that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then how did things go for you as you progressed into your teenage years, as you started getting older? Like I don't know, did you get baptized somewhere in there? Were there any seminal moments? What was life like for you as you're going from this little kid who is at the meetings. All right, it's true. Cool. I'd like to watch Batman. Like, how did things go for you?
Well, I did get baptized at age 19, so we're a ways off
Okay.
from there.
Okay.
I probably would have gone along that path of like being just like a really good, like, I'm going to be the good little witness, even if I don't care about it all that much. And probably would have gotten baptized a lot younger. When I was 8 years old, there was a thing that changed the entire path of my life where I realized, oh, guys are hot. I like looking at men. um Yeah, we had a congregation picnic, and this brother in our hall threw a football over it, landed by me. I remember it vividly because he runs over, like, "Oh, Spencer, can you give that to me?" And I pick it up and look up, and it's like, "Oh, you look nice." I'm just kind of standing there, frozen in place, and it took me a while to figure out what that all meant, that there was a name for it, and that I was gay and all that. But like immediately, I knew that from that moment, I knew there was something different about me, and that it was something that I couldn't tell anybody. And I don't know where that instinct came from, but it served me well. Well, to an extent, I think it was good that I didn't go around telling anybody, at least in the witnesses.
Yeah, at 8 years old, that is a rough thing to tell witness parents or any witness, right?
Oh yeah. And
Interesting, though, that you didn't even conceptualize sexuality at that time or anything, but you knew it's not safe for me to say this or to be me aloud, so to speak.
yeah, and I don't really know where that feeling came from exactly, but I picked up on the vibes, I guess. I don't know. Like there's the old Live Forever book that they used to have that they study with people with. There's a picture in that book somewhere of I guess they're railing against all of, like, the sins of the world or whatever. But one of the pictures has these two women both in like a wedding dresses, like holding hands, like they're getting married or something. I remember coming across that picture and just trying to ask my mom what was going on there. She got mad at me for even asking about it. Like wouldn't explain to me a word, anything about it, not even why it was wrong or that it was wrong. It's like, I'm gonna ask about that.
It
So
was taboo.
yes, it was very taboo.
So you then probably extrapolated to some degree what you were feeling was also taboo.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I really feel like homosexuality is one of the biggest taboos and like one of the most like hated things within the Jehovah's Witnesses, like to this day. Like
I agree.
I don't know, you can, like, at the conventions they'll get people who'll be up there and be like, I used to murder people, but then I became a Jehovah's Witness, and the people in the audience would be like, oh, he's so brave, like what a great way you turn on his life. But if like someone got on stage, be like, well, I used to be gay and now I'm not, you got everybody snickering at them afterwards. Like it's just like pervasive how much they hate gay people.
I mean, it really is. It's sad. My dad was that way, and it's just really, yeah. There was a disgust and a hatred that was often exhibited by people, and that went well above and beyond any other sins. Especially any
Yeah.
other, like fornication or adultery or something like that. And yeah, I'm sure that those vibes were not lost on an 8-year-old kid, even if you couldn't have put it all together consciously. I'm sure subconsciously on some level you knew that this was not going to be something that was looked on with any favor.
Yeah, no, my subconscious definitely picked up on that. And so I went from being this really happy kid who loved his parents and told them everything about everything he did to like suddenly I have a secret. And suddenly it's like, I know I can't trust the people I love the most with this secret. And that's shitty. Like, that doesn't feel good. It definitely makes you more nervous, more secretive. Wasn't a way I liked living my life, and it's like I was scared of being found out. Like, I don't know, especially like obviously I picked up on the vibe at school too, that it was bad. So like I was terrified of being found out there. My classmates knew I was gay before I ever knew what the word was and made fun of me for it. Um, so it was a bad environment all around with that.
It's so sad because, here you are, you're just an innocent kid. You just want to watch Mighty Morphin Power Rangers or Batman, or you just want to have fun. You sounds like you were just this sweet, innocent kid, and then all of a sudden there's something inside of you, and you realize that, oh no, there's this part of me. It's like you lost your innocence in a moment of just realizing, hey, that guy's hot. And then it's like, oh, wait a minute. But am I supposed to think that way as a witness? Is that okay? Is this going to be accepted? It's just it's just so sad that your innocence could be ruined by something that is natural and normal.
Yeah.
It's just not accepted in certain parts of the world.
Yeah. And
Um,
just like, yeah, it was a rough experience going through that. And just like, I was trying to figure out for the longest time, like what to make of it, or like, every once in a while you would hear them mention from the stage at meetings that like it was bad, but like the witnesses didn't talk about it that much back then for good or bad. And I remember just trying to figure out like what does this mean for me, and like not knowing like where to look. And like we had I think the Watchtower Library by that point, the old CD-ROM they used to have. You would pop it into the computer, it can look up all the old books and magazines and stuff. And I would like want to get on there and like research it, but I was terrified to write like the word gay into the search bar. Like, what if it pops back up when someone's on there searching for something? So like I couldn't use that. So I don't know. I felt very just kind of like isolated and adrift. And I forget where the realization or the change came about, but there was some point where I basically just kind of realized, okay, I don't have a future. The basically just says that the witnesses basically just think that gay people are bad and they're going to be destroyed in Armageddon, and that's kind of that. And I was too brainwashed basically to realize that meant that this was a bad place for me. Instead, I internalized it. I'm like, okay, well, this means that I'm wrong and I'm bad and I'm doomed, basically. And became a very depressed kid.
yeah, it's such a big thing for a kid to have to carry. Such a huge burden that is not inside of you, but is being put upon you. I like how you brought out that instead of realizing that the environment was bad, you internalized it, which of course you're going to do. That's what Jehovah's Witnesses create in many people. And then everyone walks around feeling like I'm bad. I'm not good enough. There's something wrong with me. Not, oh, maybe there's something wrong with this thing that I've given my entire life to. Maybe it's not right. Maybe I should investigate that. It's, oh, there's something wrong with me. There's always something wrong with us, according to them.
Well, that's the whole thing with the witnesses. It's like
Sure.
there can't be anything wrong with the organization. There can't be anything wrong with the teachings or with the Bible. If there's an issue, you're the problem.
Mm-hmm.
So
I mean, it goes back to the concept of original sin. From the time that you're born, there's something wrong with you. You're already in debt and you owe someone. That's tough. You're a baby. You were popped out of the womb. What in the world? The little enemies of God. Was it Stephen Lett who said that?
yeah.
Like, that's crazy. You're a kid. How in the world what have you done to hurt anybody? You're a baby. And I mean, that's why I refer to the concept of original sin as original gaslighting. It's like, oh, you're already messed up and you just need to know that. We'll tell you how to fix yourself. And it's just really sad, that you would have to face something so huge at such a young age. Did you ever have to give talks or anything like that on the subject? Because sometimes it would come up in a Bible reading or, because there's certain scriptures that they use or whatever. Like, did you ever have to express anything publicly that went against who you knew you were inside? Allow me to break in here for a second. This channel is made possible by you, the listener. If you appreciate what we're doing here, please consider supporting at patreon.com/shunned or leave a review on iTunes or other platforms. Like and subscribe. All those things help the channel. If you're looking for merch, you can go get some Shun swag from the shunnedpodcast.com website or reach out there to be on the show. If you're looking for more ex-Jehovah's Witness content, I'll recommend my first podcast called This JW Life. You can find that on podcast apps as well as YouTube. And if you're feeling stuck in life, struggling to find happiness and community, maybe you're haunted by the past, beating yourself up, unsure of who you are or what you even want out of life now that you've lost this one identity that was given to you by a cult, reach out through my other sites like exjwhelp.com, that's exjwhelp.com, or storyworkscoaching.com. And let's see about working together to help you find a life that fits you and who you are, maybe for the first time ever. And now, back to our guest.
Not that I can remember at the meetings. If I ever had to read one of those scriptures, I think I've forgotten or like blanked it out, or like I'm pretty sure I got lucky and like never had to give like a talk about that subject because I would have had a rough time with that. I mean, geez, I feel like any like young JW boy, gay or straight or whatever, would have had trouble giving a talk like that, because I don't like even like some straight JW boy going up there and giving some talk about how homosexuality is bad. Like the other JW boys I knew still would have been snickering at them when they come down, like, oh, you're talking about gay stuff on stage. Like, I mean, teenage boys are the least mature people on the planet, but
well, sure. Absolutely. But it has to be hard to sit at the meetings and to hear the rhetoric, if nothing else.
Oh yeah,
that sure flies in the face of who you are.
And when you're with other witnesses too, it's not just the stage. It's I was out in field service one time. This other like older teenage boy in the car, or like I forget why it came up. I think some must have been like visibly gay person walked past, and the guy turns to my dad and he's like, do people like that really have any chance? Like, is there anything we can do for them? I'm like, wow. Or like when I was much older, this like one brother in our like field service car group, who admittedly was a huge weirdo, but like there is this kid who had like, it was in the news, this kid in a college had just killed himself because his roommate outed him, and like this dude was laughing about it, this asshole. You get it from all directions, everywhere.
You can laugh at suicide. There's a big problem
because oh, he was gay, so it's fine. It's better that he killed himself. So
you see the dehumanization of others. Once you can dehumanize someone else, it doesn't matter what they do to themselves or whatever, because they're not one of us. They're not human, and that's honestly kind of how Jehovah's Witnesses see gay people. They dehumanize people who are anywhere in the LGBTQ plus community. It's dehumanized.
Oh yeah.
And it's really sad, because dehumanization allows humans then to do horrible things to other human beings, whether it's dehumanizing them because they're Jewish in the Nazi days or whatever the case may be. When you could do that to somebody else, then there's awful things that can happen behind that.
Oh yeah.
Um, that's just so sad. So, you're this little kid holding on to all this. So, how did your teenagerhood play out as you were, or how did it go from there? So, you have this realization at 8. Now you're walking around thinking something is wrong internally. How's your life go?
Um, well, I had that burden on my shoulder, and unfortunately, I had like another burden and source of shame that like came down on my shoulder because like every other person who I think has ever existed on this planet, as a teenager, I loved to masturbate.
Oh
And
yeah, I had to give the anti-masturbation talk at the Kingdom Hall.
oh god,
So when
I
I
would have
asked you
gone.
about having to give any talks about something that went against who you were inside, yeah, I had to do that, right? uh,
I was terrified of
Brutal,
having to do that.
brutal.
Absolutely brutal.
Yeah,
And I did feel like it's not something that gets talked all that much about, but like the I mean, it's not like something that you'll get like disciplined or like disfellowship for or anything, but like the JWs are very like anti like masturbation, say it's wrong, it's dirty, and like it was another source of shame for me, basically. Another thing that I thought there was something wrong with me because I was doing this bad thing. And honestly, I think I displaced some of my feelings about being gay onto that. Because that, I mean, just like I already had these two things I was ashamed of. And I think the masturbating one was the easier thing for my mind to comprehend.
Mhm.
So that was like the main thing that I was just like really, really like ashamed of and upset about for like a lot of like my like middle and high school years. And that I was really worried about. And like what if
Sure.
I finds out about this, and like all like that's another really big source of shame. I remember there's one of the Mosaic law scriptures somewhere in Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, one of those, they're all the same, about how if I don't know why we need to know this, that like if like a man had a discharge of semen, he was unclean for 24 hours or whatever. And I remember lying there in my bed one night trying to figure out when the last time I was clean was. Like they really like just made me feel so like guilty and like dirty.
Yeah, well, they do, right? They make you
Yeah.
feel like a horrible person for a natural thing again. And I mean, there are actually have been people who have been not just counseled, but maybe reproved and things like that for masturbation.
Oh
And
wow.
they have there are many people who have gone to the elders out of their shame and confessed. And there are notes in people's files and their congregations about, this guy had a problem with, or girl, whatever, had a problem with masturbation and told us about it. Like they're taking notes on this stuff. I actually had a friend, um, he's an elder, was an elder. Um, he said that when he left the witnesses, he went back into some of the files and destroyed some of the ones where like people had admitted to these silly stupid things that they would be, because they're keeping records of this stuff forever. You masturbated and here's what you did and here's what you like, or like whatever, because they're asking you all these horrible questions if you're a person that goes to the elders, and then keeping records on you. Like, I've always wondered, how in the world can any elder with a straight face look at any person, male or female or whatever, who comes into their purview talking about masturbation and shame them for that, as if they themselves haven't done it, right? And so it's just such a, yeah, again, we use shame and we make you feel bad about who you are so we can control you.
Oh
It's
yeah.
awful.
Fortunately, I never went to the elders about
Well,
this.
good.
um growing up
Makes
with
it
my dad
worse.
growing up with my dad as an elder my whole life, I think I understood like what they could and couldn't really help you with just from I was a nosy little kid. I would stand there in the hallway and listen to my dad's phone calls and stuff like that. Like I knew way more than I should have. And I got the gist. I'm like, I already know all the scriptures about this and what the books say. Like there's nothing they can do. It's something I need to deal with on my own. I don't need to get in trouble. That really, I said that earlier, but that really was my overriding philosophy in everything. It's like, do whatever I can do to not get in trouble.
Yes, you learn to the environment just makes you hide all of this stuff. Or it makes some people tell all their business, that makes other people hide all their business. You
Oh, yeah.
already had a secret that you were hiding.
Yeah, so I became very good at hiding secrets, especially secrets where I knew it wouldn't do any good to tell anybody. It's like the same with me telling them I was gay. Like, how would this help me? Like, what could they possibly do to help me with this? So I never told anybody. Actually, I just remembered something while we're still on the topic. How I learned what masturbation was because of the witnesses. They had that Young People Ask book, as I think had 2 whole chapters in it about.
That's what I had to give the talk on. It was one of those chapters of the Young People Ask book.
2 whole chapters, I think, in this book about how bad masturbation is and how you shouldn't do it, why it's so bad, and how it gives you all these sexual thoughts. Which I'm like, in retrospect, I'm like, no, it was a release valve for sexual thoughts, but they don't know what they're talking about. But regardless, my mom just approaches me out of the blue one day when maybe in like 5th grade or something, and just starts harassing me about how I need to read these chapters in the Young People Ask book about masturbation. Like, it's time that you read these chapters, and bugged me about it. She asked me once in a public pool if I had read the chapters on masturbation yet, and I just remember looking at her and not saying a word and just going under the water and swimming in the other direction. It's like, why are you bringing this up here now? Like, what the fuck?
That is so unbelievably cringy and mortifying. I mean, who doesn't want their mom coming to them and being like, hey, let's talk masturbation. Like, you want to talk about that, but much less in public. Wow.
So so that's how this all started. And eventually I sit down and
they planted the idea in your head.
They planted the idea in my head. And eventually I sit down and I read those 2 chapters. And my takeaway from those 2 chapters was, okay, so how in the world do you do that? Basically, that was my takeaway. It sparked my interest. These 2 chapters that were supposed to deter me from doing this terrible thing was what made me realize it was a thing that even existed in the first place. Like, naive, sheltered child that I was, I probably would not have gotten around to it for a few more years had the witnesses not bothered to sit down and tell me about it in the first place. Like how the DARE program made more kids do drugs because it told them all the drugs were and where to find them. Like, that's
absolutely.
And I mean, the only reason that was bad is because they then told me it was terrible. But they introduced this thing into my life that would make me, and then they made me feel terrible for it.
They introduced shame into your life.
Yeah, that's how I felt.
No, I mean, it's true. That's what they did, essentially. And they said, hey, here's this thing that, you know, we're probably telling you. I can't remember what the words were in any of those chapters anymore, thankfully, but you know, they're probably telling you somewhere in there, you know, it feels good or whatever, and you're like, well, hey, there's something that feels good. What's this thing, right?
Exactly.
Of course. Oh, who's not going to? Oh, wow. So they introduced you to it, and then you ended up feeling the shame from it.
Yes. Feeling awful, crippling shame and fear for years. Like, in, I think, my senior year of high school, I got taken to the hospital from school one day. I went to the emergency room with chest pains. Like, I went to the nurse's office. She took my blood pressure, and it was super high, and she sent me straight to the emergency room. And my dad was in the car taking me there. It ended up I had pulled a muscle. Me and a couple other brothers my age had helped someone move a refrigerator the week before that, and I pulled a muscle, and that's what it was. But like, I remember the whole way to the emergency room, the only thing I was scared about is like, are they gonna ask me at the hospital if I masturbate? Do I have to lie in front of my dad? Like if I don't tell them the truth, will that like affect my medical care? Like that was the kind of thing I was thinking about in that situation. Like it's just like a pervasive fear. And yeah, that like and the fear of like finding out of being gay, and like everything I did, it never really let up, even with like good friends.
I can't really, I can't remember what it all was going on at that time, but in the timeline of years inside Watchtower, but I know that over the years, many times they've had talks, I would say probably on a fairly regular basis, about secret sins and how, you have one of these sins and like Jehovah's going to make it come out. Like there was a brother one time who had cheated on his wife, and he was giving a talk, and during the middle of the talk he just broke down and exclaimed, I cheated on my wife. And then, the congregation's like, oh my God. And, he was outed right there in the most public way because he had this secret sin and Jehovah made sure it came out, And it's like, did you ever hear any of that? Because I know, I had a lot of shame around masturbation and things like that. And I know that I would hear those talks and I was like, holy crap, am I going to be up there giving a talk someday and just break down and admit what an awful, evil, demon possessed, horrible person worthy of death that I am? Is that what's going to come out, while I'm talking, doing the Bible reading or something like that? Like, did you ever worry about those things?
I remember those talks. And also my mom was very adamant about, if you ever do anything bad, it will get found out. You will get found out. And I always had that in my mind, but I never thought I would be the one doing it. I'm like, I was never afraid of being on stage and breaking down. I was like, no, I know I'm a vault. I'm not going to say anything. Like I had a friend who, whenever he did something wrong, would tell on himself. My mom's like, I'm never worried about him doing anything wrong, because he tells his mom like every time he feels upset about doing something. I remember thinking like, man, what a sucker.
Well, I was honestly the same way too. I was involved, but they told you that like the Holy Spirit will make it like bubble forth and come out. And I thought, wow, like, am I like, I think I have control of myself, at least in that way. Am I going to go up here and then just blurt it out somehow and like unconsciously from the Holy Spirit?
Oh, I was definitely terrified that like God or the Holy Spirit would make it known somehow. I was constantly terrified that I would get found out. Just I was never terrified that I would be the one doing it. Like I was pretty convinced that I was safe from that. But I was constantly terrified of like being caught or being found out, or, like of any of those sort of things. Like that was like my driving fear in school and at home and all that. Even with like when I got a little older in high school and I had some like JW friends in my hall that I hung out with all the time, we were good buddies. It was still like I always had to put up that wall and pretend with them so I wouldn't get found out. Like we watched this movie together once, an R-rated movie that we shouldn't have been watching, but we watched, called Boondock Saints, which is there's this one shot in it where like this girl falls over and she has one of her boobs, like one of her breasts out. And it says it's like a split-second scene. And like, of course, my horny like 15-year-old friends pause it and are sitting there like going crazy about it for like a half an hour. And I'm sitting there like half pretending to go along with it, and also half being like, oh, can we go? Like we should, like pretending that my being uncomfortable with it was like a witnessed rule thing instead of a I don't care about this sort of thing. Like trying to walk that line. There was always a tightrope of fear there, especially when I would have crushes on most of my male JW friends I was also trying to hide and terrified of being found out about. Like,
Sure. Wasn't Boondock Saints animated, or am I wrong on that?
no, I think you're probably thinking of the Boondocks with that was on Adult Swim for a while.
Oh,
Boondocks,
maybe I have the two confused. I never saw either, so I
that was
probably
a
have it confused.
that was a cartoon. I don't remember who was in Boondock Saints, but it was live action. It was one of those
Oh,
like late 90s action movies with these two brothers who were like Irish assassins and they're being chased by an FBI agent. And it was something
oh,
like that.
okay. Um, well, yeah, that has to be hard too, because now you're around heterosexual males expressing certain things that now you either have to, so I guess there's another way you would have to either kind of go along with it or just be quiet and compartmentalize or whatever the case may be.
Figure out some way to handle it. And there was never a good way to handle it. I had this, I mentioned her early on, like my best one of my best friends growing up who lived across the street from me, this girl whose family was were witnesses.
Mhm.
They've all left now. We actually reconnected
Oh,
recently
nice.
and are pretty cool again. It's been fun having somebody like in my life from my childhood. But her family all left when we were like in like late elementary school or whatever. And she never like actually got this fellowship, and she would hang around and go to the meetings sometimes, and like would still be close, still keep up with some of the witnesses, and like she was a little, like kind of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out sort of thing. And she showed up at a convention one day, and I got real excited and like ran over and gave her a hug, and we are talking for a while. And my one like male friend was just adamantly convinced that I had a crush on her, because otherwise like why would you be talking to a girl or like hanging out with a girl if we didn't like her? And it's like he could not be convinced otherwise. He'd made up his mind, and I mean, it's not a huge deal in the end of things, but I do feel bad about it. I just ended up playing along with it because it was so much easier than, one, you couldn't dissuade him otherwise, and two, it took a lot of heat off of me that like he thought there was a girl I liked, so he wouldn't suspect me of being gay. Like,
Sure, you did what you had to do to get by, right? I mean, what else are you gonna do? It's a
yeah,
shame that you can't be authentic in those situations, but that's not up to you.
I hated doing that kind of stuff though. Like, I have a very hard time lying or like not being anything other than what I am, which is maybe a little hard to believe when we get a little hurt further and hear some of the stuff that I've done and gotten away with without anybody finding out about. But like, no, I hated that. I was never the like gay JW who tried to date a girl or go out with a girl or like went around talking about girls and stuff, because I knew I wasn't convincing and it made me feel bad and shitty and like just too unsincere. But then that also made it a lot harder to fit in and made me scared. So it was just a constant boiling little teenage pot of like fear and depression and like rage.
Fear, depression, rage, and hormones,
Yes,
right?
yes, with
You
no outlet.
know, fear, depression, rage coming out of, some of the internalization of what they're saying about the hormones. It's so unfortunate. So how did things progress as you got older?
Well, we're starting to hit a couple turning points here. The summer between my junior and senior year of high school, my family took a trip to Florida to visit some friends of my parents who had lived up here where I live, and then they moved down to Florida, and we went down and visited them. And um they had a daughter who was like maybe like 5 or 6 years younger than me. She was always like kind of like my little sister, but we hung out with her cousin who was like my age at the time. And I don't know what it was, but like I wasn't like attracted to her, but I definitely had like a kind of like a crush on her. Anyway, I don't know, maybe I just really wanted a friend and thought she was cool, but
Sure.
who knows, whatever. That was how I interpreted it at the time, that I had a crush on her. And it was didn't we really clicked, had a lot of fun, didn't go anywhere. She had a boyfriend. Wasn't actually a witness. She was like studying with the family. So they would let her hang around to try to like be good influences and stuff. So like was gonna like ask her for her email address and didn't. And like whatever, I got back home and just felt so awful because I kind of felt like that was like I felt like that was my one chance to be straight, and
Mm.
nothing, and like which it, obviously nothing would have happened, but like that was kind of what I felt like, I had a chance to kind of like be normal and be good, and that I didn't. Then I kind of like let it get away, and that nothing was ever going to happen again like that, and just man, my moving forward from there, like next year was rough. I was really, really depressed. That was when I was like, had a lot of suicidal thoughts. Because it's kind of like, why? Well, that was the worst part. I didn't want to die really. Like there's a lot, still so much stuff about like being alive that I loved, even if I just wanted to like read this new book or see this new episode of a TV show or stuff or whatever. But it's like didn't see any other way out. I like didn't know what the answer was. Like,
Or was it kind of a, I feel like I'm going to, this life is pointless to some degree, because I mean, Jehovah's Witnesses set everything up as the entire purpose to life is to make it through Armageddon so you can get to the real life, it's to some degree on the other side. Um, did you kind of feel like, well, I'm never going to be able to make that. So what's the point of living?
yeah, that pretty much exactly. Yeah, like I just knew I was hopeless at that point. So it's kind of like, why am I'm never going to be able to like make God happy and get through Armageddon. So like, what is like the point of me even? There isn't, like, I felt like there's no other option for me. Like I'm never going to be able to get out of this. Like, and then like it led into all parts of my life because I just could not picture a future for myself in any sense. I could never picture myself like being an adult with like a job and a life. It's like I felt like that was the kind of thing I didn't get to have, or I wasn't supposed to have. Like I just felt like there was no point and no future, and it was, man, it was really bad and really intense. Like I did end up at least telling one of my friends how shitty I was feeling, even if I couldn't really tell him why, and like tried to help me with it. I don't know. I never self-harmed. I thought about it a lot. I had a lot of like dreams and fantasies about cutting myself, but like I could never bring myself to do it. But me and a friend did start a little fight club and beat each other up in the woods. I feel like that was kind of my self-harm. Because I just wanted to, kind of felt like I deserved to get beat up, I think.
Punished?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's something wrong with you and you need to be punished, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was absolutely how I felt.
That's horrible. Now, Jehovah's Witnesses really don't teach self-love, they teach self-hatred. And it's and you don't, obviously if you're gay, that's a hard thing to escape, but I mean everybody feels a level of that to some degree. And it's just so sad that you would have to feel like you deserve to get beat up, or that you deserve to hurt, or that you can't tell people who you really are. It's, I mean, talk about isolating. That's that's where it comes from. And yeah, you should be able to go to your parents or anybody and express your feelings and be met with compassion and have people seek to understand and to help. But that's not what Jehovah's Witnesses are. I would assume that in some point of your hopelessness, you're also thinking about moving forward. And what do? You have to keep this on the down low for the whole rest of your life. What is it getting you so far but misery?
Yeah.
And so, and then if you come out with it, then it's like I talked to a gentleman once. He was gay. We were at a party. Obviously, he was never a witness. And we were talking about my wife and I and how we disassociated or whatever, said we didn't believe the same anymore. And he was saying, wow, it's kind of like coming out. It's like the only thing is, when I came out to my parents, I didn't know exactly how they would take it, but I knew that there was a chance they would accept me. But when you're one of Jehovah's Witnesses and you come out as a non-believer, as gay, as whatever, you want to live a different type of life, you usually know what the end result will be, and that people aren't going to accept it. And so it's like kind of walking around with a guillotine, your head's on the chopping block and the blade's up there, and you never know when it's going to drop on you.
Yeah.
It's tough.
I don't think I ever had any like illusions that like things would be any different. Like I knew, again, I was always very worried about the rules and what was right and what wasn't. Like I knew what would happen. I wasn't going to try to go out there and be like, well, maybe it'll be different for me or any of that stuff. Like I'll say I did eventually. I forget exactly when. I think it might have been when I was during that year where I was really depressed. I think I did go to my parents and tell them I was really depressed, but like it didn't go anywhere. I mean, my dad, for one, just didn't really believe me anyway, basically. But also, like, I couldn't tell them why. So it was very like, I felt like I did actually feel like I really accomplished something by even going and telling them that at all, because I was terrified. But I still couldn't tell them why, and so ultimately just really kind of went absolutely nowhere. Pointless conversation.
So there was nothing good came of it.
No.
Did it make it worse?
I don't think it made it worse, other than being a really uncomfortable conversation, but it definitely didn't help me at all.
Sure.
And at this point, during this period, I do like graduate from high school, and I have no plans or anything, because again, I don't think that I have a future or deserve any kind of good future. Like I ended up there's a guy who was in our congregation who was studying, who was opening a Little Caesars at the time. He was starting his business, and he hired me to be one of his first employees. But he literally just like came to me one day and he's like, I heard you needed a job, and just like handed me a uniform, and that was that. And then I worked for that guy for like 15 years after that.
Wow. Wait. I heard you needed a job. Like, so who told him that you needed a job?
Probably my parents. I don't know.
And so he's like, I heard you needed a job. You're going to take this one. I'll see you at work tomorrow.
That was more or less it. Yeah. Like
wow.
I didn't interview or anything. It's like, and like, I don't know. I wasn't in the Little Caesars for the whole 15 years. I moved up into his office eventually, but it was like, and enjoyed that more. And it did give me some skills that have helped me find like a legitimate job now. But like, it was just a really dead end job for a very long time. And it's like that. It's like, I didn't have any like higher goals or aspirations or ambitions or anything. It's like, okay, I work at Little Caesars now, and like this is my life forever. It's kind of,
well, it's like if you don't have any dreams, they will be provided for you, and they'll be somebody else's dream. That's how it is,
Yeah.
And really, as Jehovah's Witnesses, your dreams are handed to you. You're used to that, right? It's like, well, my dream is to live forever in on a paradise earth, because that's the dream that was handed to me from the time I was a child. I don't have any of my own dreams. And so when a guy comes to you and is like, hey buddy, here's your dream job, pizza. Like, hey, all right, let's do it. I mean, what else would you do? I mean, you're raised for that.
Yeah, really. Nah, so
not that there's anything wrong, and let me be clear, not that there's anything wrong with working at Little Caesars or anything. It's good honest work. I'm just saying that, like, but if there's something else that you want to do that would be outside of that realm with your life, or skills that you want to develop or things you want to learn, you're kind of hamstrung, because it's just like, well, here, you're going to do this one thing that I'm giving you now.
Yeah. But also a lot of that was really my like depression talking, although that depression was like prompted by the religion and the mindset that put onto me. So like it's all interconnected. But like my dad wanted me to go to Well, I went to a Votech school and just didn't like the course I ended up taking, and then he wanted me to go to community college. That was, I think that's still big for the JWs. It was huge for the JWs around this time. Where like, oh, go to community college for 2 years and go into like a trade or a really good job straight from there, and you can stay living at home and go locally and all that. And we did an open house and everything, and just like, I mean, to be fair, I still don't really know what like my like dream job would be or what I would want to do. But I just went through there and like I was so out of it. I don't barely remember what we even saw there. And certainly nothing leapt out to me and to be like, this is something you can do, Spencer. But also I was scared. I mean, I didn't think I deserved a good job, but I was also scared that like if I got a good job and I like moved out and got to my own place, I figured the first thing that I would do was sin. Sin, like I'd go hook up with some guy or something, was like what my mindset was, even though like I wasn't baptized at the time and I thought I was going to be destroyed at Armageddon anyway. I was still so worried about doing what was right, even though by my understanding at the time, I had no possible chance of living up to their standards. It was just like so ingrained into my brain, really
Yeah.
strung me up.
Do you think that working for this guy, because you said he was studying with someone at the congregate in the Kingdom Hall, right?
Yeah, he was a publisher at the time. Actually, he never got baptized. He
Ah,
stopped. He stopped going not long after, maybe like within like a year and a half of when I started working for him. But
okay.
he was a regular presence at the hall for quite a while at that point.
Do you think that working with him too maybe was even I don't know, did you see that as some measure of safety? Because at least you were working kind of with witnesses, with a witness under him in whatever capacity?
I could have,
I just
yeah.
wonder.
There actually was some guy who came into work one day at the Little Caesars and was hitting on me, and like I remember like knowing that that my boss who went to the meetings was standing like on the other side of the room. I don't think I ever actively thought that, but I'm sure it was subconsciously a part of the thought process for sure.
It's so sad though, because you're afraid of yourself,
Oh yeah.
right? You're being taught you have no control over yourself, and that who you are is somehow sinful and awful or whatever, and so you're afraid of yourself. And again, instead of integrating who we are, we're taught to disown ourselves and lead ourselves about like a slave. What a wonderful life. It's so terrible when you think about it. Got to be long suffering, another good word.
Oh yeah. I was very good at just doing what I was told and going along with
Sure.
what everybody wanted me to do.
So how did you end up being, so you said that around this time, I guess you got baptized at 19. Were there things that led up to that?
Yeah, so there's actually two things that happened to me right about that point in my life that led to me getting baptized. And the first was that they started putting together a new young people last book, because that last one I had talked about was like from the 80s, and everybody in there looks like they're from the Flock of Seagulls. So eventually they were making this new one, and they started doing it chapter by chapter in like the Awake magazines. There'd be like these new chapters that eventually they compiled into a book. But they did one about homosexuality, and it was a new understanding, I guess, for the witnesses. They were I think they're trying to catch up with like all the other religions who had already changed all their understanding or whatever. But they basically said, okay, we know that some people are just naturally attracted to the same sex for whatever reason. And this alone is not a sin. It's only a sin if you act on it. And if you have these feelings, you can still, they didn't use the word celibate, but they basically, you can still stay celibate and not sin and be acceptable to God. So I saw that and I'm like, oh, I actually do have like a potential future. Like there's a path forward for me.
Wow, they threw hope in there for you.
They did. At the same time, for a few years running up to this, I had this friend. There was a friend of my dad's in the congregation where he started studying with this kid. He's like, this guy was a month younger than me. His mom, I think, was a baptized witness, but she had a whole lot of kids and traveled around and would go to a congregation for like a year, then drop out, and then like go somewhere else to a congregation for a year and drop out. And she just surfaced in our area, and this friend of my dad who lived down the street from me just happened to start talking to the one son who was my age, and my dad and this brother basically asked me to try to befriend this guy. And I couldn't stand him at first. I thought he was an asshole, honestly. And it was really frustrating because like all my other friends and like the adults, everybody like loved him. And I really felt that he was like sucking up all the attention and like taking my friends from me and stuff. But I don't know. We ended up eventually like clicking and like really hitting it off. And like we liked some of the same weird anime that we'd sit around watching on tapes, and like some of the same music, and you give me CDs, and I don't know, we ended up really hitting it off. And I don't know, I basically eventually fell madly in love with this guy. Like I had one of the biggest crushes of my life on him. Like, I don't know, he kind of became my confidant. Like I had this experience where I had kept a journal for a few weeks in middle school, and I wrote something in that journal about, they had an 8th grade dance, and there was actually a girl in my class who had asked me to go to the dance with her, and I had told her no and gave it a regular JW reason. But I wrote something in that journal, one sentence about how even if I could go to the dance, like I can't tell them that I wouldn't want to anyway. It was like me knowing I need to keep things secret, even in my like journal kept things very vague. But my mom, of course, went through and read all my shit, and like one day out of the blue, like jumps on me about this passage and is asking me if I'm gay. But she's not really asking me. It's more like, please tell me that you're not gay, is the text here that she's saying. But I ended up telling this friend about this. Obviously not, I didn't tell him I was gay. That's one that like my mom read my stuff and thought I was gay and was like writing me about it. And like he ended up being the person I went to with all my problems, with all my depression. He's the guy that I was fighting in the woods. Like, I don't know, just like we had a weird relationship. Like he would sit next to me at the hall and put his arm around me. And like we went snowboarding one time with a bunch of other brothers and fell asleep in the backseat of the car with like our head on each other's shoulders, like wrestled all the time. Like it was definitely a little homoerotic. Like I think he's been married now to a couple different women. I'm pretty sure he's not gay. He might be bi, or knowing his personality, I think he also might have just gotten off on someone paying attention to him. I don't know. Like,
could be, sure, yeah.
We never discussed me being gay, but I feel like he had to have had an inkling. But anyway, so this whole relationship is blooming, and it gets to the point where I basically decided, if the opportunity ever arises, I am going all in with this dude. Like, he's got me. I don't care what the witnesses say, whatever. So I have that in my mindset. And then there was actually a day where something kind of started to pop up, and we were talking about gay people came up somehow, and I said something along the lines where, oh, well, like they can't help who they're attracted to. And he's like, God, like, of course they can. I don't know, he went off on this really like homophobic like diatribe. I'm like, oh, God damn it. So that kind of like shattered my rose-colored glasses there. And I started seeing all these other ways that he was kind of a shitty friend. Like I really just think he got off on all ways of having somebody that was like that, like dependent on him and looking up to him. And like he used to give comments at the hall about how there was somebody that he was helping out and how good it made him feel and stuff. Like it was a really weird relationship. But yeah, so I don't know. We honestly had a huge falling out. Like I was so pissed at him and also so scared of what I almost did that I nuked that friendship from orbit. Like just fucking brought the roof down on it. And like we basically never spoke since after then.
Well, yeah, you then saw that the relationship wasn't as safe as you thought it was,
Yeah.
once he said what he said. And I mean, back to, going through your kid's journal and then confronting them with it like that, you just nuked your parental relationship in some way. Like, you do something like that, your child's not going to trust you. You obviously were already not trusting. Maybe she'd already read some of it before, I don't know, but just in the way you wrote and were not quite 100% clear about things, showed that you knew you couldn't trust anybody.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. My mom could like tell I was pulling away from her, and then would kind of double down and like try to grill me about stuff and go through my shit, and then I would react by pulling even further away and keeping even more secrets. So it was a rough like teenagehood there, but yeah.
And you're supposed to pull away as a teenager anyway. That's
Oh, you are. Yeah, there was definitely some of that natural pulling away stuff there, and like it would have been tough to have any privacy in that relationship no matter what. Like especially when I was young, they did so much for me. My mom did like so much like my schoolwork and like school projects and stuff. Like she's supposed to be helping me with it, but ended up kind of just like doing a lot of it on her own. We'd have like arts and crafts projects in elementary school, and these kids are coming up to stuff that are obviously made by kids, and like I would come in with this like big like covered wagon made out of popsicles, so like my mom made. Basically, like I sat there and like helped her glue things on, but she did like the majority of the work, and it was very obvious like my mom was like doing my work for me. And it, like I was probably a little shit about it too, because the kids would come in and talk about like how hard it was or how long they spent on it. I'm like, nah, me and my mom did it. It was real easy and it was real fun. And like, but I don't know. It was like it went from like her knowing everything I ever did at all times and me trying to kind of wrestle control around. And actually, one of the first, possibly the first lie I ever told, or at least first major one I didn't come clean about, was in middle school, where we had 3 books we were going to read throughout English class, and my mom comes home from the first open house that school year and is badgering me like, oh, be sure to tell me about when you get your first book so we can like work on the book report together. And I'm just like, it came and I was really frustrated and just like tired of her being in my business. I want to do this on my own. And I just never tell her that I got a book. She kept asking me, I just lied and said, no, I never got this book. I did the book report by myself. And honestly did pretty shitty on it. I think I got like a C or something. And
that's okay though. You did it. You're supposed to do it. Your mom can't do your work for you through your whole life. Good for you.
Yeah, but I didn't take that lesson from it. I took that lesson. The lesson I took was, oh God, I need her help to accomplish anything. And ended up coming to her for help with like my other book reports and stuff. But so yeah, there was always kind of like that struggle going on like in the home in terms of privacy. But with this friend of mine, I'm glad we went on that diatribe because I wanted to say that story anyway. I had forgotten. But with this friend of mine, that whole relationship crumbling and me realizing like what I was about to do, what I wanted to do, combined with that Young People Ask article showing me that I did actually have a chance to be a good witness, made me get baptized. That was like, okay, I want to do this. I can do this. And so I did it. Like, I'm a very, very fortunate kid that I never had like a lot of pressure from my family to be baptized. One of my mom's older sisters, my granddad would badger her all the time to get baptized. She got baptized, and the day she turned 18, she moved out and never went to another meeting again. Like, so I think she saw that and didn't want that to do that to me. And she would always tell me that, which, I mean, decent advice, honestly. She's always telling me, don't get baptized for any reason other than you want to and you are ready to like serve God the rest of your life. Like, yeah. I mean, I
that's
think
what it's supposed to be, right?
That's what it's supposed to be. Yeah. I mean, I think, I don't believe in the religion and the whole thing's a little predatory no matter what. But like, if you're going to go by what the religion says, that was good advice.
She wasn't rushing you into it. She was allowing it sounds like, to whatever degree to be your decision.
Yeah, absolutely. It totally was. And I didn't really have any pressure from the congregation either, only because I was such a good like kid that everybody kind of thought I was anyway. Like when I did get baptized, I had so many people tell me, wait, I thought you had gotten baptized a long time ago. Like I heard that from so many people. And I'm just like, have you've never seen me running the mics or like doing anything like that, which should have been my clue that people weren't paying as much attention to me as I thought they were. But being bullied all my life with just a big secret I was hiding, hyper vigilant all the time, constantly thought everybody was scrutinizing me. And
Sure.
honestly, I'm still a little hyper vigilant just about dumb things now. I'm always paying too much attention to what's going on. But yeah, so I got baptized at 19. And when I did that, though, there were two things two thoughts I had going into it. One, I kind of always felt like I would mess up someday. I'm like, I feel like there's a really good chance I'll still mess up someday, do something with a guy, sin, maybe get disfellowshipped. I thought maybe I'll leave. Maybe I'll leave someday, but if I leave, even if I leave, I'll always know it's the truth, which, spoiler alert, did not happen. And I thought, but even if that happens eventually, I have to try it. I have to say that I gave it the good old college try, was how I felt. The other thing I thought at the time was like, I made this decision, but I know there's going to be an incredibly difficult decision. Even knowing now that as a gay person, I could have a future as a Jehovah's Witness if I keep it a secret and never have a relationship and never have sex. I made the choice to do that, but I knew it was going to be a really difficult, sucky decision. And I thought I can never ask anybody else to do this. Like I'll go out in service and preach to straight people, but if I get like another like gay or queer person like out in service, I can't preach to them. That was the oath I made in my head. I made this decision. I don't feel comfortable asking anybody else to make this decision, was what I came to in my head.
Wow, that shows how uncomfortable you really were, even with the decision that you made at the time. You wouldn't subject it, you wouldn't push it on anyone else or subject anyone else to it. Wow.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I never really wanted to be a witness. I just felt like I had to be. It's the right thing.
The right thing to do, right?
The right thing to do. Yeah, it's the right thing to do. This is what you have to do. If you don't, God will hate you and they'll be destroyed at Armageddon. Like, what else do you do? Like,
There's no other option offered, right?
No, I really didn't see any other option. Like,
yeah, who's gonna be like, you know what? I think I'll just go ahead and mess this up and die. I mean, some people do that eventually and end up physically out, mentally in, because they're like, well, I just can't live up to these standards, but they don't live happy lives.
No. And that's where I thought I might end up eventually, which is not what happened to me. But I even went into it with those thoughts in mind. But like, yeah, I don't know. I was always the kid growing up who was like, I wish that like I didn't know about this. Now that I know about this, I have to do it. But like, I wish that like if I hadn't been born a witness, I wouldn't have to do this. I'm like, if they came and if I hadn't been born a witness, and like they came and knocked on my doors, I never would have listened to them. Like I knew that. Like wouldn't be talking to some random person about religion when they come knocking on my door. I'm not that religious or spiritual of a person. Like, do you remember they talk about at meetings about how like they say everybody has an innate spiritual need. And if you're not a witness, you'll never really be happy because you're not getting that spiritual food to fulfill that spiritual need. And like, that is bullshit. But I always thought that was bullshit. Even when I was a 100% fully in believing witness, I'm just like, I don't think that's right. I'm sitting there like, I've never felt that kind of spiritual need like that. Like, if I'm not at meetings for a while, I don't miss it. I don't walk away feeling like full of knowledge and refreshed. It's just like, I'm doing what God's telling me to do because I have to, because he says I have to, basically.
Oh, the circular reasoning. No, I get that. I felt much the same. I kind of sometimes thought it was a curse on some level that like I was exposed to this thing. Now I know it. Now I'm stuck here because I can't go live any other kind of life. Because if I do, it's even worse to have known that it was the truth and then to have some other kind of life. Like, why couldn't I have had a life like my parents got a chance to have a normal life before, I came along, and then they learned the truth later. Like, why couldn't I, if I had to do that, why couldn't I Serena Williams it, right? Why couldn't I go out there and live my life and have my successes and have my relationships and do whatever I want to do? And then later I can suddenly take it seriously, right? But no, I never got that chance.
Yeah.
Because I was doomed. I was taught the truth in the beginning and I knew it was true. So now I'm stuck.
Exactly how I felt. That is,
Yes.
like, well, I have to, it was like resigned, like, oh, I have to do it.
Yep. It's too late now. So you got baptized. You get baptized? Did you feel any different afterward? Was there anything that happened? I mean, I usually there's some instant pressure, especially for brothers to, do something different in the congregation, to pray after the meetings or something.
Well, I wasn't one of those people who walked into it like expecting to come out of water and seeing the doves flying by. Like, I knew it was just like, it was I can't think of the word I want, like figurative. It's like a,
sure.
Yeah, I knew it was like a
symbolic.
Yes, that's the word I was looking for. I just knew it was
of
symbolic.
Your dedication.
Yeah, which I actually did know. I did know that you were supposed to have a dedication prayer and did have that, which is one of the few prayers in my entire life I ever said and finished. I was not much for prayer, partially again because I felt so guilty all the time about everything. Sure. I couldn't bring myself to pray most of the time. But yeah, no, the baptism was nice. Like, all my friends were there. We went out to dinner afterwards. I had two other friends who got baptized the same day as me. We were from my congregation. We were all kind of like baptism buddies, and like had that like connection and would text each other on that day every year and stuff. That was nice. Yeah, no, I liked doing all the responsibilities at the hall. Honestly, if I'm running mics or if I'm on the sound booth, that is something I can do that is not listening to the meeting. That is much more engaging. I'm up walking around. I don't have to, I have an excuse to like not answer while I'm busy doing this. Like, so I loved that. Actually, I got really like insecure about that. One of the other two friends got baptized the same day as me. It was one boy and one girl. So the other guy, I don't know what was going on there. It might have just been completely unconscious, but like we had the scheduled times when we were supposed to do like working on the sound system or holding microphones for people. But then there'd be a lot of times where somebody didn't show up or they had to switch and they'd come ask somebody to fill in. And if they needed one person to fill in, they would always come and ask my friend. And then I needed a second person, they would kind of come and ask me. And I honestly got like really like paranoid and jealous about that. Like, what's going on? Why are you always going to him and not me? Like, even when we're sitting right next to each other, like, what is the deal? So I don't know. I don't know. I almost saw that as like a sign of accomplishment and like just wanted to do it as much as possible. But it was weird. Don't fully know if I've quite processed what was going on there. But
everybody wants to feel important, right? And when they go and they're asking somebody else all the time and leaving you out, it does feel, you do take it personally. It's like, well, what's wrong with me? Why can't I? So then you end up wanting to do this job, right?
Yeah, I really did.
Privilege, like, of course.
The privilege, yes.
Privilege.
But I was pretty zealous and took it pretty seriously for like a year or two. I tried really hard. I felt pretty good about it. I was doing Bible reading. I was trying to figure this stuff out. I regular auxiliary pioneered for a year, which is where it was at the time regular pioneering was 70 hours a month every month for a year, and it's like there's a full-on contract, whereas regular auxiliary was you had to do 50 hours a month, but it wasn't like a yearly total. You could stop anytime you wanted.
It was like a month-to-month contract whenever you wanted to sign up, right? Yeah,
month-to-month contract. Like once you start and you just keep going every month until you tell them to stop was what it was, basically. And that was actually the only time I really feel like one of those talks at a convention that's meant to like guilt/encourage you worked on me. Like one of those talks that was like you should want to pioneer. And if you don't want to pioneer, you need to ask yourself, why don't I want to pioneer? Because, that's a problem with you if you don't want to pioneer, and everybody should want to pioneer. And I don't know, at that one point, it hit me right at that right moment where it's like, well, why aren't I? Why shouldn't I? I'm all in. Let's do it. But I was working like 35 hours a week, and I was mostly on day shifts at the time. So we ended up, me and that same buddy that got baptized on the same day as me, and we were always like rivals for like running microphones or whatever. Me and him both decided we were going to do this regular auxiliary pioneering, and we were out at 6 o'clock in the morning, 3 days a week for 3 hours, going out to gas stations and parking lots, trying to hand people tracts, basically, which is one of the biggest wastes of times in my entire life, even by like field service standards. Like, in my decades of going on field service, I never accomplished anything, but like that was by far the biggest waste, the biggest waste of time.
Like, I had to laugh in my decades of going out in service. I never accomplished anything. Yeah, neither did I. Neither did most people.
I don't think
a waste of time.
I don't think most people do. There's a small handful of people who will have like studies and have somebody become a witness. But I think most people are just going out there and talking to people and like wandering around neighborhoods and being told no, or like shoving watchtowers into people's hands, like
knocking on doors where no one ever answers for hours. Yes.
And it's amazing when they don't answer because it's so much better than the alternative.
Yes, yes. I loved it when we went out all morning and nobody answered. It was the best morning.
Hoping for people not to answer, and then getting really upset when they did, and I have like nothing worthwhile to say. or like try to do the worst. I'm just rushing through the worst presentation possible, so I can just like jam it into their hands, and they take it, and I go away, and I write it down in my book. And every time somebody asks me if I have a return visit, I leaf through my book. I'm like, no, I don't think I have any near here. Sorry, they're all over on the other side of town. Like, so I would like never have to go back.
Oh, but we can go to the other side of town and waste 30-45 minutes driving over there because that's a good use of time too.
Well, that was totally like the gas station stuff. I was just driving around in circles, burning gas, sitting in parking lots, occasionally go scaring some person walking through a parking lot at like 7 a.m. with a magazine. Like, but I don't know. I really tried to do that for the first couple months. And then honestly, I think we did that close for a year, but like after the first 2 or 3 months, it really just turned into neither of us wanted to be doing it. And we're just out there. We would drive to like 5 or 6 different places. Nobody felt like getting out of the car. So we would just sit there for a bit and drive somewhere else. Just like the biggest waste of time. And I'm sitting there thinking like, if I'm really trying to do this, I should be trying to do other kinds of service. But like, I didn't want to give up my like Saturday afternoons or like my evenings. It's like, no, that's my time. Like, I need that. So it kept doing this. Honestly, it really kind of destroyed my friendship with that guy. We were just always together and always miserable and got sick of each other. And like, we're trying desperately to get other people to come with us. And like, we were so sick of each other by the end of it.
Are you saying that you didn't have a good time pioneering?
I did not, no.
Yeah, neither did I when I regular pioneered. But, they would always have these talks and they'd say that, no, ask any pioneer. And you'll never find a pioneer who says that they had a bad time pioneering because Jehovah will bless you and blah, 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 blah. But I hated it. And every time they would give that talk and they'd say that, I was like, if I could raise my hand and say, no, man, like, it was the worst. It was awful. Yeah, I would do so. But they, you're shamed so that you can't express your true feelings about something like pioneering, so that they try to make it sound encouraging all the time.
Oh, absolutely. And I also, again, like always, kind of internalized it. And I'm like, well, I'm not doing like all day Saturdays going out with the group. I'm not doing like letter writing or phone calls. Like if I diversified it, I'd be enjoying it more. It's just all this going out at like 6 o'clock in the morning that I hate, but I'm not willing to change up my routine enough. So like I blamed myself for it. But I actually never quit officially. Um, about like 8 or 9 months into it, my family took a trip to Florida. Those same friends down there, like the friend who's like my little sister down there, she got baptized. So we took a trip down there to see her get baptized. I just did not get my time that month, and that broke the spell, and I just stopped. I just stopped right there, and like just like went back being like 10 hours a month after that, and never officially quit or told anybody. And just a few months later, they announced all the regular auxiliary pioneers and didn't mention my name. I'm like, oh, good, it took me off the list, and I didn't have to do anything.
Oh wow, avoidance worked.
Oh, so avoidant, so incredibly avoidant was I. But I, yeah, really, really did try. I felt like for a while, and it does like it wasn't working. And like even just on like the personal level, like I felt so zealous and good about myself for a few months, and then the same shame issues and the same fear issues I always had were still there. It didn't do anything about them. I was still gay and still ashamed of it and still terrified if anybody found out. And like I kept trying to find some sort of relief. Before we kind of started hating each other, I actually did tell that friend of mine that we got baptized in the same day. Like I wrote him a letter and sent it to him over AIM, AOL Instant Messenger, to
Oh yeah, back in the AIM days.
oh yeah, back in the AIM days, to tell him like I'm attracted to men, but I'm never going to act on it. I'm dedicated to being witness, but it's so tough to deal with. And then I shouldn't have just said, I forgot, I shouldn't have just said that like being out in service together all the time destroyed our friendship, because it was also that I came out to him and then basically tried to make him my therapist. That all that combined together really kind of like destroyed our friendships. I needed help that he certainly couldn't provide.
Oh, you were looking for somebody to confide in. How did he receive that message?
he he understood. He said that like he couldn't necessarily empathize, but that he sympathized was what he said. And like he didn't hold it against me, and understood where I came from, and like we were still cool for a while. I don't think it was me being gay. It was me like just like making every time we hung out being like about me and like my trauma and my issues. I think really kind of um messed us up. I mean,
Well, sure. I
he
mean
was he was
that is difficult though. I mean, where else did you had nowhere else to
I had
go?
nowhere else to go.
He was the person you could go to. So
Yeah. I mean, he was in other ways kind of being a dick to me too. I don't need to get into that, but it wasn't just me, but that was definitely a big contributing factor. And he talked me into telling my parents. He's like, he's basically, you need to tell your parents about this. Like they will be able to help you or something. And so I couldn't bring myself to have the face-to-face conversation with them, so I wrote them a letter and basically told them the same thing. Like, also, writing a letter is another running theme in my story. But I wrote my parents a letter basically.
well, again, it wasn't safe, right? So writing a letter may at least gave you a feeling of safety, even
Yeah.
though you had something difficult to express. So don't sell yourself short, because it still takes courage to write that letter, knowing that it's going to be read.
Oh yeah. It was terrifying. I got off of work that day and just drove around for like a few hours. So I was scared to go home. I was like expecting all my shit to be on the front lawn, like when I pull it up or something, like
So how old were you?
20 maybe.
20. Okay. So roughly, because your mom had asked you, or well, did the please tell me you're not gay thing.
Yeah.
Now here you are a couple years later. Now you're 20, and now you're writing them a letter and expressing to them who you are.
Yes. Yeah, I did that. But again, it was the I like men, but I'm never gonna act on it. I'm sticking with Jehovah. I'm gonna be celibate, like all that sort of stuff. But just like I can't deal with this alone anymore. And really all of these confessions, I was just looking for some help and some relief. And just
Sure.
it wasn't really anywhere to be found. Like nobody was capable of helping me, because really there wasn't any way to help me with this. Like it's not something you can just like pray away or read scriptures and deal with it or whatever. Like,
Well, denial is the only thing that they have, right?
yeah, and I
Denial is
was
not
already
an
doing
effective
that. That
coping
was already not
strategy.
working.
Yeah, denial is not effective.
So that conversation with my parents went okay. Like they didn't throw me out or anything, but it was just like my dad was just like convinced I'd been molested. He's like, this doesn't just happen. You weren't just born this way. Like something had to have happened. And he kept trying to find out if I'd been molested. And like my mom basically just rattled down a list of every male friend I'd ever had, asking me if I was attracted to them or not. And like,
Oh, like, are you attracted to Bob? Are you attracted to Doug?
yeah.
And how did that feel? That has to be a tough conversation.
I legitimately blocked parts of that out. Like it came up later. Like I specifically remember there being one or two friends she didn't ask me about, and later it came up that she did ask me about them. So I blocked that out. Apparently, like just straight up repressed some of it.
It was traumatic.
It
Horrible.
was. It was
A
traumatic.
horrifying thing for you to come out to your parents and then to have them. I mean, they're doing the best they can with the tools that they have, but those tools are woefully falling short
Useless tools.
and abusive. Yeah, they're terrible tools.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like they're like, okay, they know, but like we literally never talked about it again, and they had nothing to offer me that was helpful. Like it was just every once in a while, if there was like they had that one song we would sing at the meetings about like people for whatever circumstances like cannot get married or cannot have a date or whatever, and or like not have a mate or whatever. And like never that song was not my mom will say that she was like thinking about me and is like proud of me or something, which I mean that's nice. But I do appreciate that my mom was at all the way through the end of the story, I think always kind of really got what a struggle this has been for me and sympathized, which I do appreciate. But
Yeah.
there was just like nothing they could really do to help. And then we never talked about it again. And I was basically right back where I started.
Right back where you started, but now was it a better situation or was it even worse because now they know and they might be kind of paranoid about it?
I didn't really feel like it was worse. I just felt like it was exactly the same as it always
Exactly the
been.
same. Okay.
And just I had one
So
other
it just wasn't brought up. They weren't like, see you talking to somebody and then they get concerned or something.
no, nothing like that ever happened.
Okay, good.
Yeah, they literally just I don't think they wanted I think they fully thought I was genuine and they didn't like suspect me of doing anything moving forward, but just like they also like it was just so awkward.
Well, you were genuine.
Yeah, well, I was totally genuine at the time.
Yeah.
Um, and so it did, but there was like I also just kind of feel like one that was like so awkward that they wouldn't want to bring it up, and also I definitely kind of feel like they were a bit like, well, what are we going to say and what are we going to do? Like they were as stumped as I was. Like,
Sure. Yeah.
what do you do about this? It's like plug along.
Jehovah's Witnesses has put everyone here in a really bad situation.
Was like just keep calm and carry on or whatever. Like,
Yes.
what else are you going to do?
Yes.
I ended up coming out to one other JW friend who was this guy that kind of came along right after I got out of high school. I had known him throughout school here and there, and we ended up becoming really, really good friends. And I told him eventually, and he was kind of a weird dude, and near the end of our friendship, kind of became a pretty big asshole. But he was legitimately trying really, really hard to help me. And like, unlike my parents or unlike that first friend, he was somebody that I could just kind of like be casual with about it and mention that I thought some guy was cute, or like he would ask me some questions about it every once in a while and not be weird about it. So like that actually did help a little bit to have a friend that I could kind of be honest with. But even then, like if we got talking about it too much, he would very deliberately be sure to remind us of how well like that like God doesn't approve of homosexuality and all that stuff, just to keep us honest.
Understood.
So it was only so much help. But that's basically I plugged along like that for a few years. Like my mid 20s. And that's just kind of what the way life was. I
Just going to meetings, keeping parts of you on the down low so that you're not, you're not acting on who you are, just getting by, it sounds like, surviving.
yeah, surviving. And like, I mean, I did plenty of fun stuff during that time. Like me and that one friend of the band together that would play in, and like I still like did stuff I liked, but like I don't know, I looking back, I kind of really feel like I wasted those early 20s, which are like years where you're really supposed to be like discovering yourself and doing crazy cool new things. And I was like in the biggest like downward rut of my life.
Yeah, it is tough. Yeah, the 20s are when many people discover who they are and start figuring some things out, and they start putting it together in their 30s. But it sounds like you, well, I mean, and of course you couldn't go explore. There was no
Yeah.
exploration.
I mean, and I'm certainly I'm certainly far from alone there. There's honestly a really common saying in like the gay community, like gay people have their teenage years in their 20s, and then like they go through they're in their 20s when they're in their 30s. And like and I feel like adding like, growing up in a cult to that, like
Yeah.
just push the timeline back even further. Like
Understood. Yes. So it does sound like you had some good times. Like you said, you were in a band at a point and some different things. So that's not like you didn't have any good times in your life, but you were still, that one struggle remained constant.
yeah. I mean, it's like I said early on, I've always been really good at finding fun stuff to do and things that make me happy, even if it's something small. So like, I mean, I always had that. I was never, that's why people I think had a hard time believing I was depressed, because I was always just like a really kind of happy, chipper person, even when I was really depressed, because like most times people saw me is because we were out doing something fun or whatever. And like, I'd be having a blast. And it wasn't that I was sitting there like moping, being like an emo boy. Like, so like people had a hard time believing it too, which worked a little bit against me. But
Sure.
yeah, I really, really was just plugging along for a few years there. And that could have been my life forever. Honestly, I don't know if things ever could have changed. And that's where we hit the like very beginning of my like almost decade-long journey of waking up and leaving. Because things
Okay.
did change.
So it took you a minute. I mean, you're here talking to me today, so clearly something changed. So what kind of kicked off that 10-year journey of you waking up? Was there a pivotal moment or an inciting incident, something that started you down that path?
Oh, there's about 4 or 5 inciting moments.
Okay.
like as we go down along the timeline. But the first one that hit was with that friend I mentioned, who I eventually came out to and like could be cool with. We were in a band together. We hung out all the time. We hit this point where we were going out in service with these 2 girls in our hall, who I think they both had like a crush on him, I think, at the time. And so we would go out in a group of like the 4 of us. And one day this friend just comes to me and he's like, "Yo, man, you've been acting kind of gay lately," basically, for lack of a better phrase. Like, I thought I don't know if I fully know what he meant by that, but it was like I was acting too flamboyant or effeminate, or I don't know what he meant, but something along those lines. And like, this wasn't completely out of the blue, because like every once in a while he would come to me with some weird made up task of something that he thought I should do to try to be like, to see if I could like spark like heterosexuality or be more straight or whatever. Like, he told me once to see if I could find an actress I thought was pretty and just like masturbate to pictures of her until I started being like sexually attracted to her or whatever was his like mission for me. And just like weird stuff like that. So this wasn't like completely out of the blue, but it was like, he's like, "You really need to start not like, you need to stop like looking at guys and like stop like masturbating and do more at the meetings. You should be studying more. You should be answering more. Like that, it will make you more straight. Basically, you need to be more straight or you're going to get found out." Was basically what he came to me with. He's like, specifically are spending all these time with these girls in service, like they're going to catch on to it, was basically what he said. So I did not want to be found out, so I really tried. And I, for maybe about like a month and a half, I really tried. Like I stopped everything. Like diligently tried to be good. I started reading all my watchtowers and awakes and studying for all the meetings. I really hadn't been doing. I never did that regularly, like ever. Like most people, I assume. What witnesses read every single issue to Watchtower and Awake, especially when we were getting 4 of them a month. Like, and they were like the 40 pages at the time. Like, when would you do anything else? But I started doing all that, and it's by my friend's probably fairly arbitrary standards, it seemed like it was working. He told me that he thought I was like acting more masculine and was doing a good job or whatever. I don't know. It's so bizarre. There were so many weird, there's like a lot of my friendships, so many weird things I overlooked at the time. looking back.
Sure. I mean, he was in such a bad position here. I mean, clearly betraying his lack of understanding of these things too, with his rudimentary exposure therapy of sorts. He was trying, but with what he could. But yeah, that puts you in such a bad position too.
It did. So what ended up coming of that was I went to Ocean City, Maryland, the beach with my family one day, which is like one of my favorite places in the world. I love going to Ocean City. And like, I remember riding in the car down there. I'm sitting in the back seat, like reading an awake as we go over a bridge, and I'm looking at the water. And it was just a really beautiful day. I'm having a great time. And we're standing like on the boardwalk eating ice cream. And this guy walks by and he has great legs. I'm just standing there staring at them. And like, I realized, like, wait, what are you doing? And I am just like beating myself up in my head, like just being so awful to myself. And like, I'm just standing there berating myself. I had was like driving my nails into my palm, like subconsciously, just like I was just really worked up and upset. And that was like a light bulb went off in my head. And it's like, what are you doing? You're in your like favorite place in the world on this beautiful day, should be having a great time, and you're sitting here beating yourself up over something you don't have any control over. What are you doing? You're going to kill yourself. You are going to just break down if you keep doing this. So I stopped. Like, I still believed that the witnesses had the truth at the time, but I knew I couldn't cut it, basically, that it wasn't good for me. So like, I don't know, I still lived with my family. I had a terrible job. I couldn't leave, and I still believed it. I was still afraid to actually like sin or act on any of my desires or anything, but I stopped studying, stopped reading the magazine, stopped answering, stopped paying attention at meetings, like stopped giving anything any more effort than I absolutely had to when it came to being a witness. I just went into complete autopilot, disengaged my brain at meetings.
Did you also stop beating yourself up then for those thoughts that you had internally?
I did, yeah. I guess that's a pretty important part of that. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, so it sounds like you allowed yourself to you stopped being your own thought police.
Yeah.
Interesting. So where do you go from there?
It's funny. When I eventually left years and years later, and I told my mom that story, and she thought that was so sad, that not that I was beating myself up, but that I decided that I reached that point in my decision was to give up. They always just feel like you should be trying harder. You can try something different. You could ask for help. And I'm just like, tried it all. You don't have anything to offer.
Yeah, you did ask for help.
I did all of it.
And at the end of the day, you said it yourself. You said, if you keep doing hey, Spencer, self Spencer, if you keep doing this, you're going to end up killing yourself.
Basically.
Would your mom rather have a live Spencer or dead Spencer?
I don't think they can fully comprehend that. Like, it can't actually be that bad, because they can't to say that I would reach that point would be to admit that the religion was doing something wrong and pushing me to my breaking point. So no, it had to be that I gave up too easily.
Yeah, because otherwise Jehovah would just help you to not be who you are, right?
Yeah.
And make it easier. Not easy, but make it easier. There's no one is tempted beyond what they can bear. There's a lot of people that unfortunately aren't here anymore. There were a lot of people that were pushed beyond what they could bear. And so you can't say that.
When I was a real believer, I held on to that scripture too.
Yeah.
I actually that was, oh, it's sick. That was actually part of why I was so terrified of, like, if I go out on my own, the first thing I'll do is like hook up with some guy and sin, because I legitimately like thought that like nobody ever flirted. I think there were people and even guys who were like flirting with me, and I just didn't realize it because I'm an idiot. But like, I thought the fact that I never even had an opportunity, or that like the people weren't flirting with me, was because like God was preventing it because I couldn't handle it. I just assumed that like if I would be able to resist that sort of thing, it would have happened. And so nobody's flirting with me, so I must not be able to handle it.
Oh, buddy. No, well, I shouldn't say no. I mean, it comes up in my coaching practice as well, but I mean, it's such a common thing. Many of us have absolutely no clue how to flirt or what flirting would even look like, because we grew up in this kind of, I don't want to use the word improperly, but kind of asexual environment, kind of like sexuality was just dumbed down, like not dumbed down. It just didn't exist. It did not exist inside. Like nobody was supposed to be flirting. Nobody was supposed to be feeling any feelings until they got married, right? Like, so there was this denial of everything sexual, of everything relational, and everything was shamed. Like flirting was even seen as bad.
Oh yeah,
There were talks about not flirting.
Maybe kiss your fiance if you're discreet about it and don't do it too often. Like,
yes, like I remember one time, he was as a married man, but we were at this buffet, and this this woman at the buffet, she made a remark to me, and it was overtly flirting, to where I couldn't deny it, because otherwise I would probably have no clue. And she said what she said, and I felt so bad afterward, but I laughed because I was so unaccustomed to anybody flirting with me. It was funny that somebody had done so. And I felt so bad because I'm sure I shamed her on some level. I didn't mean to. I was just so taken aback that anybody would flirt with me out in the world around me, especially in an overt way. That's I was just not accustomed to it. So yeah, witnesses crush all that stuff. Nobody knew when they were flirting with them.
I'm pretty sure I did that same thing once or twice too. Like,
sure,
yeah, you just don't know. Honestly, it's a little bit of a self-fulfilling cycle, or at least for me it was, because it's like, well, nobody can ever be. I hated myself so much that I was convinced nobody could ever be attracted to me, and then I don't see anybody flirting with me, so that reinforces the belief that I'm like terrible and unlovable, and it's it's a big vicious self-fulfilling circle.
The vortex of self-hatred,
yes,
and lack of self-esteem. Yes,
yeah, they feed into each other. I am incapable of recognizing it, but then not seeing it reinforces that belief that you can't have it. Like,
yep. There's so many stories like that, and they're not mine to tell, but yeah, it's just really tough. And so so for you then, that had to have been hard. So what else was going on?
Well, I go on like that for a couple years, and it was really nice. Honestly, I just like living my life without that like weight of like shame and depression on me was so nice. I remember I forget exactly when that breakthrough happened, but I remember 2012 just being like one of the best years of my life at the time. I just started reading books again and had fun and started making some friends on the internet and like doing stuff like that and just like letting that guilt go and like not trying so hard in such a futile endeavor. Like, I don't know, I was just really at peace.
Yeah, you can't swim upstream forever.
Yeah. And like I wasn't making any big overt changes or thinking about leaving or any of that stuff, but just like it was taking that first step of letting go of that like guilt and shame as much as I could was just made a huge difference in
Well,
my
yeah.
life and my attitude.
Okay, so now you're actually starting to be a little happier. So
Yeah.
what does that result in?
Well, it comes to the next turning point, which was near the end of 2013. There's this band I really loved, my favorite band for years. They're called Saves the Day. They put out a record in 2013 that they basically kickstarted. It was, I think, on Pledge Music or something, but it's like, hey, contribute money to help us make this record, and we'll give you like prizes in return. And like, I don't know, it was all sorts of stuff. You give like $10 and they'll send you like signed handwritten lyrics. There are some people who paid $500 and they got like paid like a free house show for them and like 50 of their friends. Like, it was cool. It was really cool. I pledged $200 and my prize was I got to be their roadie for a day. Like, work backstage with them at the show, help set up equipment and stuff. And it was
That's awesome. I know who Saves the Day is. That's pretty cool.
It was a really cool experience. I basically snuck off like behind my parents' back, like told them I was at a friend's house and like drove down 2 hours to Washington, D.C. by myself, which is like the longest I'd ever gone on my own before, and just worked backstage with them, made friends with their other roadies. From like being in a silly little garage band, I played one show. I understood how to set up equipment and move equipment and got a lot of compliments from like their crew. Like, they trusted me to, like, if a band's playing, sometimes they have to switch guitars in the middle of a set because they need a different tuning or whatever. Like, they let me take the guitar out to their guitarist a couple of times. And like, I think that's what the roadie does. And their guitar tech comes over me at one point. He's like, hey, just so you know, like, I did not let any of the other roadies for a day do this. Like, you're good. I trust you with this. Like, this is a compliment. Like, feel good. Basically, is what he told me, which was so cool. But I don't know. They were just like really good, really normal dudes. Like, we just sat in like the back room and like shot the shit, and like they're very friendly and like took some pictures, and like, I don't know. I remember sitting in this back room and like seeing like the biggest sense of melancholy. Like, I don't know. As we've talked about, I was never somebody who was super into the religion. I was never somebody who really thought about its consequences on other people. I was never somebody who wanted to preach. I remember sitting there and listening to like their singer have a conversation with somebody, and I'm just like, I just get like the overwhelming urge to preach to him. I didn't. I'll take that tension off the story. I didn't, but I get that overwhelming urge. And I'm thinking like, I don't want him to die. I finally get that sensation. I don't want these people to die in Armageddon. It's like, okay, they're back here, like what? They're smoking a little weed, like they're cursing a little bit. He's talking about like meditation, Eastern religion. It's like, these aren't bad people and they shouldn't be killed for this. That is what I'm sitting back there thinking. And it shattered. It shattered my faith. Just something that simple. It's like, I don't know. I just had never really considered that before.
So
like,
basically, for the first time, you were spending time with quote worldly people and didn't see them. You just saw them as human and not worthy of destruction.
yeah.
You didn't need to saves the day.
Basically,
that's awesome.
Yeah. That's what it came down to. And it's just, I don't know, like I had like in high school, I had friends at school that I like really liked, and even like we would do stuff together sometimes, like not after school, obviously, because I didn't have any way, but like we would skip class sometimes and like go out and get food and stuff like that. Like I really liked them, but like somehow the idea that like they were going to be like destroyed someday, even though I knew that factually, never really sunk in. And that was finally the night where it sunk in. It's just like, I can't believe this anymore. It's not right. It's not kind or loving. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah, I don't know. It just shattered for me.
Well, you
I
also
think,
saw them smoking weed and talking about Eastern mysticism, as you said, with some meditation. But you saw them doing these things, and they weren't hurting anybody. They,
no.
it wasn't like the pictures in the magazines where, just the ridiculous interpretation of what it is to be worldly and all the harm that comes from such things.
Yeah,
Like,
no,
just guys talking.
exactly. And like, even if there are some really terrible, bad people out there, there are so many people who are just doing what they're doing and they're fine. And like maybe they hurt somebody here or there unintentionally, but it probably helps so many other people too. And it's just like the majority of people do not deserve to be destroyed just because they don't believe in this God. That was just really, I don't know, the conclusion that I all kind of came into spiraling in like the next couple of weeks after that. It was a weird rush. I don't remember a lot of it, but that's like basically what it all came down to. And honestly, for a minute, it was weird for me to think that like my issue for all those years was like my own self-hatred and being gay, but I couldn't see how badly they were treating me and how ridiculous that whole thing was because I didn't value myself enough to do that. And it finally had to be somebody else that broke through my guards. Somebody else I cared about enough to break through those guards.
Yes, so many people who are abused can take a stand for an adjacent person that they even see maybe being abused in a similar way to themselves, but they don't love themselves enough to be able to take that same stand for themselves. And as Jehovah's Witnesses, we were taught not to care about ourselves. We were taught, again, that we were good for nothing slaves of Jehovah. So we at best got undeserved kindness from God. So like there's nothing about us that really is good or deserving of anything good. So why would you take a stand for yourself? But it was cool that you could see it through the eyes of maybe other people that didn't deserve that fate either.
Yeah. Yeah, it had to be somebody else to really make me feel it. And like then all of a sudden, once that happened, it started like breaking through like my feelings about myself too and everything. But like that initial salvo to even be strong enough to make me consider it, it had to be somebody else.
So
So
what's the next part of your story?
well, I spend a couple years kind of reeling from that, honestly. It's like, I don't know, I still don't like I wasn't working in the Little Caesars anymore by that point, had been for a few years. Like I moved up into that boss's like office. Like he had several other businesses that he ran. He did construction and stuff like that. And I was working in his main office doing a lot of like administrative tasks and stuff. But like it was much better than the previous job, but like it still wasn't something I could support myself with. And like at that point, I don't have any skills or like dreams or career paths to fall back on. So just like the idea and the practicalities of moving out and leaving just completely eluded me. But also, I was still so caught up on the religion being wrong. I had really had to process that. And it really took me a long time to fully process that. Like I spent like all of 2014 just being really angry and like going to every meeting and listening to what they said and be actually listening at the meeting. And like
The
trying to
first time Spencer's actually listening.
basically
Sure.
like trying to prove to myself whether things were right or wrong, like actually like listening and reasoning and stuff. And like I don't know, there's an international convention too. I think if I'm remembering from your story, it was the last convention you ever went to, the
Yep,
2014
Indianapolis
International.
International Convention.
We were in Washington D.C. that year, but like yeah, it was the same program.
Yep.
watching videos, they had international delegates, so people from other countries were at that convention. And I actually remember Morris had one of his famous speeches there, and I'm just sitting there like, what the fuck is he talking about? Like, and like, there's just lines for people standing around to hand like a bag of like goodies with their name on it to like international delegates and like to say hi, they can't understand each other. And like, I don't know, it felt like I was at Comic-Con. like when you're in line for like to like meet and greet so you can talk to like the guy who plays Wolverine for 30 seconds and then move on. Like that's really what it felt like to me. It was
They
honestly
brought in the JW celebrities.
they did. It was gross. It just really felt gross to me, that whole convention. And
Wow, the JW Comic-Con. I like it.
exactly what it is.
So yeah, Toni Morris. Yeah. I think it was it after a Toni Morris talk? This is why I hate to see Toni Morris go away to some degree, because I think it was after a Tomo talk that we were like, fuck this. This does not add up. This is not what we came here for. We have given us so many chances. We've got to bounce. I don't ever want to do this again. This is gross. So you were sitting there listening with fresh ears yourself and starting to see that it was kind of gross.
Yeah. Just that whole thing was kind of gross. It was super crowded. They had to walk for 1,000,000 miles. They're sitting there in the rain one day. Just like, it's just like, why are we doing any of this? It's just so weird and such a waste of time and so performative. And like, the stuff they're talking about Spanx. It's like, what the fuck is happening? Like,
so you're seeing all of this without the aid of any quote apostate information. So this was all just you sitting with an open mind, actually listening to the information and thinking about it with your own critical thinking skills. This was not that somehow Satan had infiltrated you through evil apostates or anything like that. You just were actually looking at it for what was being presented to you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would have, like, it takes a while to break through the conditioning, and you're still grappling with stuff. Like, if someone safe had really asked me at that point, I would have said that I didn't believe anymore. But I also would have been terrified to look at anything that was critical of the witnesses at that point. Like, absolutely terrified deep down to your core. Like, they really drill that into you, to be scared of like anything that's critical to witnesses. Like, it's evil. It'll turn you in a second. Like, it's the most powerful fucking thing on the planet.
But isn't it interesting though that you don't even need that at first, right? You can start noticing of your own volition. Because I remember, like, my mom would tell friends of mine that she was worried that I was an apostate and that I must have been reading apostate things. I wasn't reading apostate things. Apostates were just people who saw exactly what I was starting to see myself and then left eventually. And then, maybe saw some other things with fresh eyes or new information. But you don't have to be an apostate. You just have to have your brain turned on, and you can start seeing things that don't add up. I mean, most witnesses have those things already.
Oh yeah, we all have something that we bury. Like, I talked about like what made me a believer all the way back when I was a little kid was that video about prophecy. And like, oh yeah, they talk about, I think it was like that one king that took over Babylon, I guess, wherever they kidnapped Daniel to. Like, they mentioned that one Darius, I think. Like, the Bible mentions that one king before it happened. And always in the back of my head, I'm like, but was the book of Daniel written before that happened? Like, do we have scrolls or like original manuscripts that are older than Darius? Could that have been added in later? Could all these prophecies have been added in later and we don't realize it? Do we have any of these original copies? Like, I thought that a few times, because that really,
Spencer.
Like, that really was like the crux of like, I believe this is true. I believe the Bible is true because it can prophesy the future, so it has to be true. That was always the crux that it stood on for me.
All the way back to the video you watched when you were 5, 6 years old.
So like those doubts will come into my mind, like, is this actually true? Like, can we go back and prove that this is really a prophecy? And I would shut it down. I would shut it down because that is you can't question that. You can't.
Too risky.
Yeah, you just can't do that. So like I don't know. Yeah, we all had those things that we shut down. That's like if you actually start thinking about it. But like again, to those people who always to the witnesses who are still and always have to sign it, we had to have read something. It's like the same thing I was talking about with my parents earlier, where it's like I obviously didn't try hard enough because it can't be that the religion let me down or that the religion wasn't good for me. It's like, well, they can't find anything wrong with it with their critical thinking because there is nothing wrong with it. So they're being misled by Satan or by like apostate material or whatever. It's just like, no, you're just not allowing yourself. It's like you're coming into this with this prefixed idea that like the Bible can't be wrong and witnesses can't be wrong. You have to shape your entire worldview around that instead of coming to like natural actual conclusions. And it's really insidious.
It is. Well, yeah, it's just believing because you've been told rather than actually proving it to yourself. And you're starting to realize that you can't prove it to yourself.
Yeah, I spent a few years being really angry and really picking at like everything.
It's tough.
But I also spent those couple of years going on the internet and making friends on like Tumblr and Twitter and like started going to more concerts by myself and like seeing the same people there every time and going and being like hi and introducing myself and like making friends and like having people I hang out with at like shows who aren't witnesses. Like I started putting myself out there. I came out to a couple people who weren't witnesses like on the internet. I just started the website Tumblr, which gets made fun of a lot, but like it was really helpful for me because it could just be like a place where I could start casually hinting around that I was gay or that I liked guys without like making a big coming out post, like not making a big deal about it. And it's like it just has a big queer portion of its user base. And I got to like just start following other gay people, following like trans and non-binary people, and just like again, it's just kind of like humanizing. It's like, okay, like they're just people just like me. I'm just like them. It's just like we're just what is wrong with this? What is scary about this? What is like, it's like that's like whenever I've seen like somebody on like the ex-JW forums and stuff who's trying to like say they're trying to like get over their internalized homophobia or they're trying to get over their homophobia in general, I'm like, make gay friends, make other queer friends. Like you can't other people if you're hanging around them, which is why non-witnesses are so scary to witnesses.
Well, right. I mean, admittedly, I was pretty homophobic as a witness. I mean, my dad was extremely so, and not proud of that, but that's, who I was at a time. And I remember in our cleaning business, we cleaned for a gay couple. I had never been knowingly around gay people in my life. And I was like, what's the big deal? These guys are great. I love these guys. Like, why is it that we're judging these people? Why do we care what in the world they do? Like, they're just people. And I was like, they were just, it was built up to be such a destructive, it would be like such a destructive force in my life if I knew any gay people. And it was like, this is dumb. Why? I was lied to about who gay people are. I've been lied to about who everybody is. I've been taught to other everyone. Our cleaning business was good for all of that because it was like we're in all these families' homes and we're seeing them and they're people. And some of them were a lot better than the people I went to the Kingdom Hall with, including the gay couple. And it was like, what in the world? Why am I judging all these people? This is dumb. I just didn't know anybody. So yeah, curing your ignorance by getting to know other people, then you actually have something to base your own feelings on.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it was just, I didn't even realize I was doing it. I was just trying to live my life. But what I was doing was like kind of slowly, well, not just desensitizing myself and acclimating myself, but like kind of starting to build up a support network too. Because like, I really hadn't given much really any thought to like leaving yet. I still couldn't get my brain to that point yet. But like I still have these friends now who have like been there for me. And like when I did leave, I wasn't alone. So like so it was really helpful for me to have that in my life. And those, I don't know, it took me a really long time to leave. And I look back sometimes like I wish it had happened sooner. But like all that time that I spent, it put me in a good place when I did leave and I wasn't floundering. I had a support network. When I did walk out, I thoroughly knew that I did not believe this would not be going back. I wasn't going with those physically out, mentally in fears where I would possibly be lured back someday because I was scared of Armageddon or sinning. Like at least like
you're starting to go full in on a quote double life, right? Where again, the secondary life outside of the witnesses is the one that reflects more of who you are and what you're really about and into. And the witness life is the one that's truly the secondary life.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And it was easy fooling the witnesses, honestly. Like I feel terrible saying it that way because like I don't like lying or being dishonest to people, but like there's these parts of these lives that I can't share with you that I will get in trouble if I share with you. But also there's nothing wrong with me doing this. So like what am I supposed to do? Like it's not a reasonable boundary to have. So there's only so much I can respect that. But like it was more difficult, honestly, for like my friends who are non-JWs I wanted to do more with, or like if there's a show I wanted to go with them on a certain day, but it was like the day of an assembly, or like I wanted to go overnight somewhere and I don't have any excuse to get away overnight, or like weird stuff like that. Like I had some friends who lived in Philly, which is where our conventions were every summer. And like I'm walking like the 2 block, just like it was maybe about 4 blocks from like the parking garage to the convention center where we're having the convention. I'm like, I got sunglasses on, like my name tag in my inside pocket, got my coat kind of hunched up. I'm like, please don't see me. Please don't see me. Like, I don't want any of my like my non-JW friends like seeing me like getting the wrong impression about me. Like, this guy's a witness? What's wrong with him? Like,
also, what if any of them would have said hi to you? Like, whoa, Spencer, my boy. Like that would, kind of blow your cover walking into the assembly.
that is also true. And I think I was thinking of that. It was a dual purpose. But honestly, I was really more worried about like upsetting or offending like my non-JW friends because by being part of something that was like hateful. Honestly, I'm like, I didn't want to be thought of that way.
Sure. Yeah. Very hateful. So how did your second life, or how did these things start progressing? Keep going.
Well, it just keeps going. It went on for too long. There's only so long that you can keep doing that and just keep going there and questioning everything you hear at the meeting, because honestly, at that point, you're still listening to it and it's still propaganda. And like a part of what was really helping me at the time, which again was something that was circulating on Tumblr, is like, a big belief of the JWs is that the world is getting worse. The world is getting worse. The world is getting worse. It's going to reach a point where like it's indefensible. It can't keep going on. And I was seeing so many things like online about the world is getting better. Here are statistics. Lifespans are longer. Disease is less. There's less homophobia, like all this sort of stuff for why the world is getting better. And that was a real like comfort to me and like a thing that was helping me get my mind around that this was wrong. And then there was a 2016 election, which not to get too super political on this podcast, but at least in my view, Trump getting elected flew completely in the face of all of that. And I'm like, okay, like this, I feel like the world and like the things that I value and like my like comfort and safety as a gay person is moving backwards, and that the world is not getting better in the way I was told it was. And it scared me. And I never started believing in the witnesses again, but it shook my conviction that it was wrong. And I started thinking about it less and drifting a little back towards where I used to be, where it was just, I'm just not going to think about this and just just kind of do what I want to do. And yeah, I don't know. I remember going to a convention one of those summers, maybe summer 2017 or something like that. Don't quote me on that. But in that time period, and I ended up going to convention twice because there was like one of those I think it was the first year where they had like the pre-recorded like dramas, and they had like I don't remember what they're called anymore, which is great. You said it would be like one of those talks, and it would be like 3 different talks, but they were all the
A
same.
symposium.
Yeah, they had like a 6-part symposium or something, and each one had like a 2-minute video, and they interconnected, and they're
Mhm.
all like with all these different stories about people in the same congregation. You could see how they're flowing from one thing to the other, and I thought that was really cool. Just like I'm a person who likes storytelling from like a narrative level. I thought that was really interesting the way they did it, and like I ended up going back to see it again. And so it's like, what's wrong with me? I'm slipping in the other, I'm slipping in the other direction. And it says, look at me, I really had gone too long without taking any action. Like I had this like shattering of faith and these like radical new beliefs. And there's only so long that you can keep thinking that way without doing something. It's like I was really drifting. I read Leah Remini's autobiography at some point during that time. Great book. She's doing really good work, but like I remember sitting there reading the stuff in it that like the stuff that the Scientologists do that makes them a cult, and reading about it. I'm like, okay, well, the witnesses do this too, so the witnesses must be a cult. But I mean, if it's a true religion, then they have to be a cult. It's what God says. Like I was starting to justify things again, and it wasn't great. So what ended up happening was I had 2 really good experiences near the end of 2018 or so. And again, like I'd still been online, like more even throughout all this time when like my conviction that this was wrong was slipping a little bit. I was still like starting to like be more and more openly gay on the internet, like on Tumblr and stuff, places where I was pretty confident nobody would ever see me that I knew. And I ended up hanging out. I had 2 experiences about within a month of each other. One is I just went to the beach some random day in the summer and met up with a really good friend of mine that who I had never met in person before. I knew her from the internet. And she was like the first person I had come out to who was not a witness. And she was super cool about it and just was a good friend. We ended up hanging out in person all day, and I just had a blast, had a great time. And it was just so refreshing to be out and honest and just myself with somebody without any agenda or without having to um hide anything or like follow these rules or toe this line or whatever. I just got to be myself, and it was so wonderful. And then like I went she went home after dinner, but I went to a that's why I went to the beach in the first place that day, because I was going to a show at this venue that was right next to the beach. And I ran into a bunch of my friends at the show, and after the show we all ended up like stripping down our underwear and running into the ocean and just like splashing around for the hour. And it was just one of those like I was in a John Hughes movie, is what I felt like. I was just in like one of those magical like teenager coming of age movies. And it's just like, why can't it always be like this? And then about a month later, I went to a show and hung out with another friend of mine from the internet that I was out to, that I never hung out with in person anymore. And he's like one of my absolute best friends now. Great dude. We had a blast, hit it off immediately. And just remember there being one point during that night where the band we were seeing played my favorite song of theirs, which they don't normally play. It's not like a setlist staple. It's a pretty deep cut. And just like I'm standing there like half tearing up, and he just like puts his arm around me and like leans down, like kisses me on the top of my head. And I don't know, I'm just like, I would never get anything even close to this kind of repression affection from any of my like JW friends. It's just like you can't be out and open and honest and like true to yourself. Even the like the straight people there and the people who are living their lives. It's just like at that point, I was just like, even whether it's true or not, I gotta go. I've seen what lies for me on the other side now, and I gotta have it. I can't stay in and like live my life without this kind of honesty anymore. Like I think I finally realized what I had truly been missing, and like the way that I wanted to live my life.
Can't live without this honesty anymore.
Yeah. So yeah, so that was where I be like, I have to make a change. And I started looking for a new job, and that was really frustrating. I still didn't have a lot of great skills, and I got set back there a little bit because that same boss that I'd always had that whole time, I was looking for a new job, and it just got turned down from a couple. And so he offered me like it's like some new opportunities within the companies and these other ventures he had, which at the time I'm like, oh, okay, great. I can do these. I'll support myself. It'll be fine. And like, spoiler alert, they didn't work out. Like, we're not too far from the pandemic at this point. So these things didn't even end up materializing until like sometime in like late 2021. And none of them were exactly what he said they would be. I'm pretty sure some of it was like borderline illegal. So
Yeah, that's something to avoid.
yeah, so those ended up working out, but that delayed me for a little bit. That I stopped job searching because I was waiting for these opportunities to come through instead. But that still sent me through 2019, where it was like a really big year. For starters, fairly early on in 2019, I saw a tweet about child abuse inside the Jehovah's Witnesses. And for the first time in my life, I had the courage to click on it and read a bit more about it. So that showed me the Australian Royal Commission and all that bullshit going on with all the sex abuse that they're hiding, their document of all the convicted sex abusers of an organization that they won't turn over to the government, or spending thousands of dollars a day on to hide, or at least they were at the time. I don't know if anything's changed with that or not.
There's a particular court case, but and that's not ongoing, but they did have to settle that.
Okay.
They had to pay money.
It was I think it was still ongoing at the time, but like I said, that was like 2019. So I don't want to say anything that's not true there. or
there's a case, I think it was in San Diego, and they were being fined because they were redacting so much information in the documents that they turned over that they were unusable, and the court took offense at that, because you're supposed to come with the information that was asked for. And they would what was it, Watchtower's paying, what was it, like, it was like $4,000 a day or something like that, they wouldn't turn over the information that was being requested because they fight against truth.
Oh yeah. Like, I had zero problem believing it. It's like, I don't know. I was an elder son. I've seen enough. Like, I don't know. I already knew about the 2 elder rule. I had known of a few pedophiles in our area. And I know there is this one dude in our congregation who was hooking up with this girl before she turned 18, and then it was found out after she turned 18. And I just know for a fact the elders' biggest response was like trying to deal with the situation without having him be labeled as a pedophile by the law. So like, again, had zero trouble believing that. I'm like, yeah, this adds up to everything I've ever seen or heard from the stage, from behind the scenes, anything. Like yeah, this is 100% right and 100% awful and really sick. I don't know, that led me to the ex-JW subreddit on Reddit, and that was like extremely helpful, because finally I had these resources to be like, to back up the things I had been seeing for myself, and I could just be like, no, this isn't true. 1914 isn't true. The witnesses are part of the United Nations for a while. Like, I don't even remember all of it now, but like, I went through that same thing so many witnesses go through, where they're seeing all these things that they thought were true that aren't true, and all these beliefs that don't hold up to scrutiny. And it's just like, oh God. And like, so that didn't shatter my faith, but it like, I think much like the first shattering of my faith, I needed somebody other than me to back me up. We
all need validation, right? You're in a world that you're in the witness world. Everyone there is validating everyone else constantly, right? By believing the same thing.
True.
Exact same thing. It's almost like it's a cult. And then
it's a wonderful assembly. It was the best assembly ever. It was the best assembly ever.
Yes, there's a reason why everybody says it was the best assembly ever, because you were told that you have to say it's the best assembly ever, right? And then there's this peer pressure. It's just like going up on a stage and speaking in tongues because the person who went up there before you went up there and fell out on the floor. And now you think, well, if I don't do this, then people are going to look at me with the side eye. So I've got to do this too, right? And so it's the same thing. People it's the peer pressure. There's so much pressure in the organization. And so it's nice when you get out to realize you're not alone, which is why they want you so desperately to never look at anything apostate, because you'll realize that other people see what you see too.
Well, absolutely. And that was so validating, like seeing other people who had the same issues I had and had come to like the same conclusions I had. And it's like, and then I can see it laid out in our literature, just like, oh, they were saying that 1975 was going to be the end, and like they were selling scam miracle wheat, and Rutherford did try to court Hitler. Like, I don't know, there's just so much bullshit out there. I can see with my eyes, and just being like having that verification to back me up. I'm like, okay, yes, I needed this. I really needed that. And honestly, there's just like so many tips too, so many things I never considered. Like that's when I started pretending to ring into the doorbell and not do it when I was in field service. That's when I
The
started
old air knock.
the air knocked up, putting my finger up to the bell, but not actually pressing the
Yeah,
button.
press beside the bell.
Absolutely. About the or just like
Emo pro tips.
making up my time. Like not anything that would draw huge attention to me. It was like fudging the hours so they looked better than they were, and like I would have to do less. It's like all the stuff I never would have even considered. Like that convention in the convention of 2019 was so much fun. It's weird to say, but it's just like I sat in the very top row with my tablet with I think like Trace's Conscience and what's it, John Cedars, or what's his name?
Yeah, John C. It's Lloyd Evans, but
Yeah,
he was
Lloyd Evans' book.
John Cedars at the time.
Yeah, Lloyd Evans' book and Amber Escora's book, all like downloadable
Oh,
on
the
my
Reluctant
tablet.
Apostate, and was Amber Score as the
What was
Leaving
her?
the Witness?
Yeah,
Something
Leaving the
like that?
Witness. Yeah. Thought that was like reading those books on my tablet in like the top row of the convention center. It's like nobody was sitting behind me and could see it. And like honestly, on Sunday, like I just left. I walked out like in the middle of like the second talk and went to the movie theater across the street and saw a movie and came back and just sat back down and went back to reading my book. It's I don't know.
There is something to be said for going into an environment where you have always felt so out of control or you had no control, and going back into that environment and taking control of it, which I think is sometimes why people crash Kingdom Halls and things like that. But you were just doing it with your books and then like leaving and watching a movie and coming back and reading your book, your apostate book again. That has to feel good.
Oh, great. It's like this isn't real and I don't have to take this seriously and I don't have to follow their rules. Like
Yes.
anything I was still doing, I was doing so like I wouldn't get kicked out of my home. But like there was so much more that I could be ignoring or doing that I had never thought to do before. So it was a really refreshing, and that whole summer and fall like ended up just being great. Like I started going out and visiting my friends from out of town more, and like I went to a gay bar and had a date one time, went out on the dance floor, and like so many cool people who like the first gay bar I went into, I was absolutely terrified. Like the bartender clocked me immediately and like basically chaperoned me the rest of the night. But it was so nice because like I think gay people especially, they get it. Even if like you're not religious, like you're dealing with people who will a lot of people I've dealt with people who will shun you. So like even outside of like ex-JWs, like I'm not alone. People get it and get what you're dealing with. And it's like it was so cool to be in that environment and like be in an environment where who I am isn't like a liability, but like an asset. I can be myself and it's fun and people appreciate it. And like it's the theme of the night. Like it was start having so many cool experiences and like living my life. And
Yeah.
actually, yeah,
As you're supposed to, as you
as
were
you're
always
supposed,
supposed to.
I was finally hitting my 20s.
Starting to figure out who you are a little bit and then be able to express it. Good for you.
Yeah. I even started like going out on like some more dates with people. A lot of my a theme of like my progress and my journey throughout my life is like I will hold on for as long as I can and I get to a point where I have to make a change. Like I physically, mentally have to make a change. And like that's I had like a couple really, really shitty weeks and I was talking to a friend of mine and like telling him about all these different like straight guys I was crushing on, and like 10 minutes later he's like, I made you an OkCupid profile here. And like it sends me the link. He's like, log in, like talk to gay men. And so like I started like going out on like some dates with people, and like I don't know, it was a really great learning experience. I had such a fun time, so many cool things. Actually, again, a little bit of a spoiler alert, but like the second date I ever went on in my life is now my live-in boyfriend of 3 years. I went on other dates after that, but like we worked out. OkCupid was great. But no, but yeah, like life was really looking up, and like I was just waiting for the job thing to clear up so that I could get out of my house. And that was January 2020. So I think everybody knows what happened next.
March of 2020.
Yeah, March of 2020 happened. And the world shut down. And I couldn't go anywhere for just months, but at the same time it was Zoom meetings, and I was sitting upstairs in my room with the camera off and the mic muted, like playing video games, like reading books during meetings, and like pretending to write letters. I would like take blank envelopes and put them in my pocket and like tell my parents I was going to the mailbox and just like not mail things. They would give me addresses, and I would just send, oh yeah, I sent that letter and I never sent it. Like there's no more field service. Like it was just, I think that period really helped a lot of people in terms of like waking up and like getting out of their spiritual, there's nothing spiritual about the witnesses, but like getting out of their spiritual routine and like getting a chance to see how much time they had really been devoting to me. Because since I have left, I have had more than a few like still believing and practicing witnesses come to me and be like, I wonder if it's really worth putting in all the time I put into this. Or it's like, I've spent so much time on this. Like, people are realizing it. And
Yeah,
like,
well, that's why they can't get people back to the meetings today. They're struggling to get people off Zoom and to actually come into the Kingdom Hall because they're realizing what they've been a slave to for so long. And so the pandemic gave them a little freedom.
yeah. And like, even for me, like it was just like I didn't work for 6 months. So like it was just a lot of free time. And like that was where like me and my boyfriend like really like fell in love, because like we were just texting all day every day. And so like as soon as I had a good excuse to get out of the house, like we started seeing each other again. And like that is a weird situation because I never really intended to have like a boyfriend or like a relationship while I was still had a foot in the religion and while I was still like living at home, because that is a lot to juggle. That is a really weird balancing act to have. And like I was upfront with every guy when I went out with that, like of like what was going on in my life and everything. And like I think that worked for me because like he lived an hour away at the time, and like I could drive up there for dates and like not know anybody, and we could like just be out in the open. Like I wasn't trying to hide him. So like I tried to be as like ethical as possible, but it was definitely a weird balancing act of still living at home with my witness family and having this whole like relationship and life behind their back, which again, I didn't like doing, but like, I don't know.
Well,
I
they
wasn't
pushed you to do that, right?
exactly. It wasn't them being upset about it is like not a reasonable thing to be. There's only so far I can respect that. And it would have been really stupid of me to not pursue this relationship out of like this fear. It would have been it would have been the worst possible decision I could have made. Like,
Well, yeah, I'd be like if they withheld food from you and you went out and found food somewhere. Well, yeah, you got to do what you got to do to survive, right? And
exactly.
being who you are is part of survival. It's going against the grain of who you are, which many people do as Jehovah's Witnesses, that results in, unfortunately, some people are no longer with us because they couldn't keep going against the grain of who they were, and their life became expendable, and it's really, really sad. So
Right.
you have to do what you have to do to survive and to thrive, even if it means lying to people that you love because, well, they've made it unsafe to be real, to be honest.
That's really that really is what it comes down to. Like, never been able to have a close relationship with them as an adult because it's like it's not a safe place situation to be honest. It's not. I really wish I could have let my family in, or like let my old JW friends when they were still talking to me, that I could have been honest. Like that one friend that, like, shitty as he was, like I was with him through all his ups and downs of like his like various like relationships, and like it was really weird going through like my first relationship and not being able to tell him about it, or like introduce him or talk to him about it, or like any of that stuff. It's so surreal, and like it shouldn't be that way.
Well, yeah, wouldn't you have loved to tell your parents about your boyfriends and things? I mean, isn't that's normal? That's what people want to be able to do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
so
Like,
it shows that it wasn't you being some sort of bad person or something like that for lying. You were lying because there really wasn't much of an alternative.
there really wasn't, no. Yeah, no, I every once in a while I get like I don't even call it trying a guilt. It's like I wish it could have been different, but
Sure.
it couldn't be. It was what it
Well,
was.
and on their part, they were doing the best they could with the tools they have. They think that this is who they have to be. That's where they are in life, and they can't be anyone other than who they are.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
But we're actually getting pretty close to the end now, clearly. Like, I'm at kind of at critical mass. I eventually gave up on that old job and found a new one. I kind of lucked into it. Like, I hate saying that because I was a great fit for the job and really had the skills. But it's just like I feel like I just kind of stumbled upon it without even realizing what it was. But I didn't realize how much I hated my old job until I got a new job. And I think I really need to get away from that old boss who still saw me as that like weird, like depressed 19-year-old that he could just walk up to and hand a uniform and be like, "Hey, you work for me now." Like, um, with like a company that like really like appreciates me and my skills and like has put the effort into like training me and like fostering a really good environment. Like, my boyfriend talks all the time about how much he loves the way my company treats me and treats their employees. There's a lot of like gifts and like bonuses and parties, just like appreciation cards, like, and thank yous and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's been really good to be in like a real work environment where I can kind of like I can feel like an adult. I feel like I'm pulling my own weight there, and then be paid well enough to like be an adult outside of it and like finally grow up.
Like a living wage and to
Yeah.
associate with other adults doing the same. And yes,
Yes.
yes.
And I got my own apartment about just over a year ago now, February 2022. I moved into my own place, and um kept up the charade for about maybe like a month or two of living there. I That had never really been my plan. Honestly, my original plan was move out, wait maybe a couple weeks just to say my goodbyes, and I was gonna send in a disassociation letter. That was always my plan. It's just like I don't want to be on their books. I don't want to deal with the fuss of people coming around. Like I don't think anybody's gonna talk to me anyway. Let me just cut it off there. And I didn't end up disassociating. I'm actually still technically like a baptized witness on the books. And the real reasoning behind that was just it felt like a really strong opening salvo. It's like, let me tell people what I'm doing and see what the reaction is first. And a lot of my real closest friends just immediately stopped speaking to me. Like, they found out before I could even tell them and just straight up blocked me on like every platform immediately. But I also had a few friends that I wasn't as super close to that had been like really kind of understanding, reached out to me and like asked how I was and what led up to it, and like shared some of their own thoughts. There's one witness friend I went on like his words, like a last outing with. Like, we went to the movies together and got some dinner, and then like I was going to try to get line of communication open, just like real casually, but I've texted him a few times since then, and he'd never replied back. So that's such a weird thing. Is like I can show the kindness of like reaching out and like hearing your side of it and like having like a farewell and like being legitimately offended by the way some of your other friends just cut me off immediately. But then eventually he still reaches that same point where he just doesn't talk to me anymore.
Running is in the DNA of Jehovah's Witnesses. It's what they do. They cut people off.
Oh yeah, it's but also I can also see from that where it's like he has to. He feels like he has to. It's not what he wants. Clearly,
yeah, because he otherwise why reach out for like a last hurrah?
Yeah,
right. Because if it's wrong, then it was wrong before the last hurrah. You shouldn't. Yes. You shouldn't have anything else to do. It's like when witnesses reach out to when witnesses reach out to people they've been shunning for years, let's say around their death or something. You know, I'm dying, I'm on my deathbed, I'm going to reach out to my disfellowshipped relatives or whatever. Well, if shunning's the right thing to do, shouldn't you maintain that faith and that same vibe all the way to the end? Why is it okay when you're dying? Now all of a sudden it's okay to call up your shunned family members and invite them in. It just goes to show, it's always wrong. You're only doing it because you're told to, and it's reinforced with threats of punishments.
And the loopholes are always like temporary or like when you think it's going to make you look bad. Like there was a family in my parents' old congregation where the mother passed away, and like all of her children were disfellowship, and they're going to come for the funeral. And they had made an announcement where like they were couching it in so much doublespeak. What they're basically saying was that like if you want to like say hello to them or pass off your sympathies, you are allowed to during the funeral. Was what they were saying. And then like that's it. And like that's general kindness, but like also that kindness is kind of against the rules, and you should be showing it all the time, or you shouldn't. Like you're just like kind of putting off the
general kindness, but we're giving you permission to be generally kind. Yes. Like, so how can you say you don't follow a man-made organization when you have to be generally kind when they give you permission to?
Yes, if you want to be kind, you're allowed to be right now, but normally you're not. That's so strange.
It is. It's sad. You're under the thumb of these New Yorkers.
But my parents themselves are not often, but they're still talking to me here and there. Like they had a like come to Jesus conversation with me where like I wrote them, as always, I said it was a theme. As always, I wrote them a letter telling them a truncated version of the story I told here of what it was like growing up being gay and having all that shame, of what kind of woke me up, why I decided to leave, why I couldn't deal with it anymore, and gave that to them. And we had a really nice conversation about it. I mean, I said I didn't want them to. I said in my letter that for them not to bother like trying to convince me to come back or reading me any scriptures or something. And my dad's like, "Well, I have to try." And like he read me like a couple of scriptures. It's like their whole pitch was basically try the thing you already tried before that failed. It'll work this time because like, well, now we'll help you. Like how are you going to help me with this? Like
didn't help before.
They don't have anything to offer me.
No, because there's nothing wrong with you. You don't need help.
Exactly.
Right? You don't need help. So therefore, the entire premise of trying to help you is false.
Exactly. And like they're still not happy about me being gay, obviously, but like I just from that first conversation I had with them 10 years ago, like or over 10 years ago to now, I can see them having softened considerably. Like if it wasn't for the witness thing, I feel like there might be hope eventually that they could like soften and come around to it. But like the witnessing puts a whole nother layer to it. But I still talk to them like once a month, like once every maybe 6 weeks or whatever. My dad really worries about my car, and that's his excuse to call me up and talk to me. Like asking how the car is doing is the end that he has to have conversation with me and keep up with me. So like my witness grandmother ended up dying about maybe like 3 months after I left. And like I went to the funeral. It wasn't at the Kingdom Hall. It was at her home, and they had it over. They had like maybe like 20 people there, and then had like a Zoom tie in there. I don't like my family welcomed me there. Found I won't go too far into their business, but I found some sympathetic ears among the family. And the witnesses who were there were at least nice to me and said hello. So like there hasn't been a lot of like, other than the people who just blocked me immediately and never spoke to me again, which again were some of my closest friends, including a guy that we have been friends since we were like 2 months old. Just one day, never heard from him again. Like at least been like with the kindness of like, not the hard out, I'm going to look at you and not speak to you and pretend you're dead sort of shunning hasn't popped up yet. Maybe it will. I don't know. I've had a few elders reach out to me with like their by text, like with their spiel, and like I don't reply to those. But I had an elder reach out to me and ask me about a TV show we both liked, and just asking how I was, and I chit chatted with him for a few minutes because he never brought up JW stuff. So I liked him. I always liked him when I was in. I'll chit chat with you, like.
Well, yeah, look, at the end of the day, if it wasn't for their hardline stance on certain things, I mean, you see it even with your own parents. I mean, it's a shame that it gets in the way at all, but your parents have their base humanity intact to some degree, where at least they can't just walk away. They, they're expressing their love their way, the way that they can. It's good that Jehovah's Witnesses haven't been able to completely root out their normal. The witnesses talk about in the last days, there would be people with no natural affection. That's Jehovah's Witnesses, right? I mean, they're the ones completely removing natural affection of families and destroying them to shun someone over something that you don't have to shun them over. Because like you said, you could talk to that elder about a movie or a show or whatever and have a good time. You can talk to your dad about your car and have a good time, or your mom. You all could still break bread together and have meals. There's so much to talk about, and it's not like, so have you in all of these conversations been trying to deconvert them and destroy their faith?
Of course not.
Of course not.
That's also, honestly, like, not, and that's still like maybe it's a weird reaction. That sounds like a huge pain. I really don't feel like getting into it.
Yes, I don't want to talk about any of it.
I didn't like preaching when I was a witness. I certainly don't like preaching now. Like I don't know, like whatever happens with my parents happens with my parents. But like if they leave, they have nothing but me. And like I don't think I can be the only thing in their life. Like,
but you see, you're a threat, not because you're going to come at them or any of these people about their beliefs, but you're a threat just in the same way that Saves the Day was a threat, because you might be able to show them that you're actually not a threat to them, that you're not as bad of a person as they've made you out to be inside the cult, and that you're just a normal human being that they could bond with and have familial affection for. That's where you're the biggest threat. You're not a threat because you're going to come in and try to change their beliefs. You're a threat because you could hold the mirror up to make them see that their own beliefs fall short without even trying.
Absolutely.
That's the scary part. That's why they shun.
Like I said, I've had a few old witness friends who have reached out to me and told me some of their fears. I guess that I feel I'm like safe now, or they can like see the life I'm living, and like ask, but it must be nice to like not have like that obligation to go to the meeting all the time or whatever. Or like even when I had the conversation with my mom, like the leaving conversation, she asked for my permission to, if people ask about me, to tell them that I'm gay, and to tell them why, like, I guess her abbreviated version of like why I left. And she didn't want people to think that I just like up on a whim up and left, that she wanted people to know that I was really struggling and made like an informed decision, which is like, I think she has some real sympathy for what I've gone through. And it's just really the religion holding her back from being able to have like that full like full like natural affection there. I think there's really a struggle.
No, I'm sure. I mean, look, I watched my parents shun my younger brother, when I was still around and the witnesses, and it does hurt them. It is hard for them to do this thing. They are being pushed to be somebody they don't want to be, but they are, I'm going to say choosing, but I'm not going to say choosing as an absolute, because they are also coerced, and they're the hook. They have so many different hooks in them that Watchtowers got them by, like sunk cost and the fear of Jehovah, which is not, it's the fear of displeasing him, yeah, because he'll kill you if you
Fear of getting
displease him. So
disfellowship
like,
and
what's
shunned.
that?
The fear of getting disfellowshipped and shunned.
Yeah, they don't want to be shunned and lose their community as well. They've invested a lot into this, and it's also hard to look at these things honestly. It takes a lot of courage to be able to look at these things honestly and to say, this isn't healthy. This isn't right. Could this maybe be false? Could I look outside of it? It's really hard. So, these family members that shun us, while shunning is vile and despicable, they're conflicted human beings caught up in a very sad human situation where they are being controlled in ways and also choosing certain things. Sometimes it fits parts of their personality that they've never had a chance to get healthy around. And so, yeah, it's just really sad. But I'm glad that you are still able to have some relationships. But it means even you coming on and telling your story today, it's courageous itself, because there could be consequences, right?
It could be. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I told you this, I would be surprised if they found this, but if they did, it's like, you mean you really shouldn't have been talking to me this whole time? Like, what did this really change? Like, a big part of me leaving the witnesses is I want to be able to live my life and not live in fear of their rules and their stupid decisions that try to control people's lives. It's like, I'm not gonna kowtow to that or whatever. Like, I'm not gonna live my life that way. So whatever
Already
happens,
did.
happens. Yeah, I again tried that, been there, didn't work. No way to live.
Right. And no one would take the steps that you've taken, whether it's coming out to your friends and family or telling your story today. Nobody would do that and risk the consequences of it for nothing. Just like, the conversation that I guess my dad had held over my head about, and I know I've mentioned it before on episodes about the gay community. As we were sitting watching Modern Family one time, and he made some sort of horrible remark about the gay characters on there, and I was like, like, I never went and sat down at the buffet of sexuality and was like, I'll pick this one. I just am who I am, just like you never did. And it would be ridiculous to assert that a gay person would be like, hey, this one over here is going to get me ostracized from my family and cause me all kinds of problems and self-hatred because of the beliefs of people who are dysfunctional. And so I'm going to choose that. No one would do that. We are all just who we are. And so, you're doing all of these things not to hurt anybody else. You're doing these things because it's who you are. And there's nothing wrong with it. They're only hurt because they have ridiculous beliefs that they're feeling hurt because of their beliefs, not because of you. And they need to look at their beliefs if this hurts them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why should something like this hurt you? And if it does, then you need to look at why that really is.
Well said.
Yeah. So, so there are some people, like you said, who have shunned you. Is there anything that you would say to those people who have taken a step back from you, or who have had a last hurrah and then walked away? Like, what would you say to those people?
I mean, to them, well, to people who have straight up shunned me, and to the people who have just like taken a step back and like minimized a part in their life, for all of them, it's like, you're missing out. Like, I would love to be able to have you in my life in a more, either at all or like in a more honest way, where we could like fully share each other's experiences. And like, I would love that. That would enrich my life. But I think ultimately I'm living a great life right now that I want to leave. And I think a lot of you guys are missing out. Like, my parents are missing out on getting to see their son in love and an adult in a relationship, like flourishing and like living a good life. Like, I would love to have them be a part of that, but I think they're missing out more than I am. And it's a shame. And your beliefs are holding you back. Like, I don't know, like, I'm not trying to like attack you or whatever, but like, it's a shame, and you're kind of hurting yourself for no reason.
You're missing out. I'm so glad that you said that, because so many ex-Jehovah's Witnesses feel like, well, I'm missing out. No, they're missing out. You actually have something to offer. As like, I'm such a better person today than I ever was as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And I wish that my dad's passed, but I wish that my mom or my youngest brother and sister, I wish they could see who I am today and get to know me, because I'm not I always had good qualities for sure, but I was a very frustrated, angry person. I didn't really like people. There was a lot of things about me that, I have worked on healing and have healed. And I love people today, and they're missing out on the best of me. Just like your parents are missing out on the best of Spencer and everyone else. Even though they get to see you a little bit and get a taste of it, they're missing out on the best of you. And it's a shame, because you have so much more to offer today as a full, healthier human being than you did as a person who was so hurting and so devastated trying to be someone you're not.
Yeah, they really don't know me. I mean, they do, but like, they don't know who I am now as like a fully functional adult. Like, I didn't, for so much of my life, I didn't feel like a real person. It felt like I was just like existed and didn't understand like what it felt like to like be alive or like be a real person with like, I mean, I still don't necessarily think I really have like big goals and dreams or anything, but to be like somebody who could just like kind of like live their life, like just like live their life and like be an adult and like be happy. And like, I think that's what every parent wants to see of their child. I feel like I remember my dad told my friend once, the one that knew I was gay, like that all he really wanted this was just to see me like grown up and like in a happy, healthy relationship someday. And I'm like, I'm there. You're missing it.
Wow. Well, let's talk about, unless I missed anything in your story there, who you are today.
I'm a really happy dude who my boyfriend moved in a couple months ago, and we're having a blast.
That's awesome.
Having a live-in, like, watch TV together buddy, and like make food and wash dishes together buddy, and just like someone to go out and have adventures with. I got friends all over the country that, even if I don't get to see them all the time, like keep in touch. And like, my birthday was a few weeks ago as of our recording, and got so many like nice well wishes and cards and gifts and stuff. And it's just like, I don't know, I have a lot of people. I think I have a lot of really cool people in my life that I'm happy to have in there, and I'm trying cool new things I never thought I'd do, and I'm just really happy. And I'm like, I don't know where I'll move forward in the future in terms of like moving upwards and like career or like whatever like that. I'm playing that a bit by ear. I still really like my job, but like, I have my own place. I go to all the shows I love, go around and see my friends. I'm going to like matinee movies every weekend and like seeing cool stuff, going out for more walks and bike rides. Like kind of really enjoying my life the way I've always wanted to live it. And it's not that threatening.
Well, I'm so happy that you get to live your life today, your non-threatening life, and be happy. And everybody deserves that chance, including your family and anyone else who may hear this. Everybody deserves a chance at happiness. Everybody deserves a chance to be who they are. Life is short. There's only one that we can prove that we have. And we might as well make the most of it, especially in a way, of course, we're not harming other people. And you haven't hurt anyone who is hurt by your existence is hurt by their own belief systems that they really need to check, because I'm pretty sure Spencer hasn't reached out and hurt anybody.
And the other one, like, thing that I'm really kind of trying to keep as like a it's kind of like an ethos for living my life, and as like my only one real goal moving forward right now, besides just like being good to people, is this, I don't know, something I've said a few times. I always find something fun, or like I've always find something to like keep myself amused in any situation. I don't know. My boyfriend describes it as like a childlike enthusiasm. I don't know, like there's like one of our very first dates, we went out and lit fireworks together, and like we were walking down the street and he stopped to smell a rose. And then we're walking a little and he looks over and I had this big stick in my hand that I was like bouncing against the spokes on the street, like pretending to light them on fire. And like we kind of both really fell in love with that. We just have like this like childlike enthusiasm all the time. And it's like I want to just keep approaching life with that. Like take the things that are seriously, but like keep going to like the zoo or the aquarium together and cracking up over the tortoises or the penguins and like finding silly little things that are fun everywhere we go. Like that's all I'm really trying to do. Go out and like have adventures with the people I love, and always find something awesome in it.
I absolutely love that. My ethos is find the fun. There's always fun. Fun to be had. We don't have to take life so seriously all the time. Witnesses take everything as though it's deathly serious, life and death. And it's so much pressure. It's so nice to hear that somebody else as well is just being a big kid at times and having fun. That's life's too short. We should have fun.
Absolutely. Everything's not a life or death decision. Like I went and saw the Dungeons and Dragons movie yesterday. That would have been a life or death decision under the witness. It's like, no, it's a good movie.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad that you've gotten to this point in your life, and I'm glad that you shared your story today. I hope that it's cathartic to listen back to, but I hope that I know it's going to help other people. I say this probably at the end of every episode, but to feel less alone, because that's, there's so many other people out there. I know I have many people on my waiting list who have similar situations as well, who, are also gay and have been able to be authentic in their lives too, and that it's meant a lot to them. So I know there's just so many people out there. We can all take something from your story, and I hope everybody will go out and find some fun.
Thanks. Your podcast has definitely helped me feel not alone all this time, and hope I can help do the same. It'd be awesome.
Oh, hey, yeah, you said you love storytelling early on, right?
Exactly.
That's exactly what this is. A man with an experience is not at the mercy of a man with an opinion. And, you are sharing your experience here, and I'm glad so many people have, because it creates a wave that can help many people.
Awesome.
Oh,